Wedding bells chime, announcing the start of a grand ceremony. A bride in a magnificent white gown and red veil walks a long, crimson aisle toward her groom. The red-haired bride tries to appear calm, but a wave of animosity washes over her as the narration reveals the wedding guests are filled with hatred and contempt, or worse, lust, as leering men watch her with predatory eyes from the pews. The bride and groom stand together at the altar, their expressions stoic, a picture-perfect couple with zero joy. A priest begins the ceremony, speaking of blessings and glory under the Creator's watch. But before he can continue, the groom interrupts, apologizing to the priest for what he's about to do. The red-haired bride knows it's a lie. She thinks to herself that none of the priest's wishes for a happy home will ever come true. As a blessing is offered, her dark thoughts take over, lamenting how bad things always seem to happen to her. In a sudden flashback, a young woman with black hair is cornered on a staircase by a man demanding money for his gambling debts. She furiously argues back, demanding to know when he ever supported her. He explodes in rage, questioning how she could ever repay him before violently shoving her backward. Her last thought as she tumbles through the air is of the stairs that led to her end. She awakens with a start, touching her lips, only to see a stranger with vibrant red hair staring back from her reflection. Kneeling in a lavish room, she looks in a mirror and realizes the impossible has happened. Is this transmigration? Click. A short-haired maid enters the room, addressing her as Lady Edith. The maid asks if she's forgotten the day's events, and the woman realizes the name Edith confirms her new reality. A new scene introduces a beautiful, blonde-haired girl, described as pure as a goddess of spring. This is Elise Sinclair, a baron's illegitimate daughter who, after a painful childhood, was adopted by the noble Rudwicks family. There, Elise meets two handsome men who are instantly captivated by her charm. But from the shadows, a woman with darker red hair watches them, her expression filled with envy. This woman was the story's Villainess, blinded by jealousy, who once screamed at someone for ruining a gift. She was a spoiled noble who did everything in her power to kill Elise, all while being doted on by a man. A glimpse in a gilded mirror reveals the face of the villainess, Edith. In a memory, the original Edith smiles brightly, thanking the maid who tells her the master is waiting. The maid watches, puzzled by Edith's rare expression of gratitude as she cheerfully runs off. Edith hurries down the hall, confident she can change her fate since she remembers the original story. She beams, believing this is her chance to finally receive a family's love without a cost. She bursts through a set of doors, enthusiastically calling out, "Father!" With a radiant smile, she wishes him a good morning. But her fantasy shatters instantly as a cold, menacing man with a goatee sneers at her arrival, remarking that it's too late for morning greetings. TSK. He turns his back on her, annoyed at how slow she is. As he orders her to close the door, a system window confirms her identity, Edith Rigglehoff. Sudden wave of energy overwhelms her. She's pulled into a chaotic void as the original Edith's painful memories begin to surface. A vision shows the original Edith begging her father and another man for forgiveness, a sight that makes the new soul plead for it to stop. She learns the villainess's arrogant attitude was just a facade hiding a terrified child who begged to be let go. A chilling memory reveals a sharp-toothed man grabbing Edith, reminding her to repay the family that raised her. She was treated as a walking advertisement, a doll draped in jewels, and an easy target for abuse. Bruised and broken, she was nothing more than Count Rygohoff's most expensive doll. In a dark, internal space, the bruised original Edith confronts the transmigrated soul, asking, "Who are you?" The transmigrator asks the fragile girl if she can handle what's to come, but the girl just stammers. Overwhelmed with fear, the transmigrator herself can't find the words to answer. Her father's furious roar, "Edith Rygohoff!" snaps her back to reality, his sharp fangs on full display. Wham! He slams his hand on the desk, berating her for being out of sorts all morning. He warns her not to make any mistakes today, and she realizes he's on edge because the rival Rudwicks family is proving difficult to manage. He orders her to act as a spy, reporting any mail from the Duke to a servant, and she numbly agrees, wondering why both her lives are filled with such awful families. Standing outside a grand estate, Edith looks down, already burdened by her family's schemes. She steels herself, deciding to review the situation, the deep-seated rivalry between her father, Count Rigglehoff, and Duke Rudwicks. The families were once equals, but Rudwicks' side soared to power after his success in the war, earning him the title of Duke. Believing the dukedom was stolen from him, Her father arranged this marriage to plant Edith as a spy and ruin his rival. Edith composes herself, thinking she can turn this awful situation into an opportunity. After all, she's developed a knack for surviving harsh situations, so this should be no different. A carriage arrives, and she steps out, taking her father's hand. They've arrived at the magnificent Rudwick estate, a sprawling palace-like mansion. Edith is stunned by the luxury, but her father and a blonde-haired man scoff that it's all for show with no substance. A gray-haired butler bows, informing them that the Duke and Duchess are waiting inside. Her father's attitude flips on a dime, cheerfully agreeing as he ushers his lovely Edith forward. Edith notes the complete personality change, a fake smile plastered on her face. She follows him inside, reminding herself that they'll only be staying for a week anyway. They're formally announced as they enter a grand dining hall where the Rudwick family is already seated. Wow! Edith is completely starstruck, her eyes wide with excitement. She can't believe she's seeing the characters from the novel in person. It's amazing. An older couple, Axel and Jocelyn Rudwick, warmly ask if she's hungry. Then she sees him, the male lead, Cliff, and his striking golden eyes make her feel like she's about to melt. And there's Elise, the heroine, whose beauty is just as breathtaking as the story described. A handsome, black-haired man with an intense gaze sits silently at the table. Bay dump! Her heart races as she clutches her chest, suddenly understanding why the original Edith acted out. This is so unfair. She can't help but admire his sharp features and broad chest, wondering how anyone can look so perfect. Wah! She slaps her cheek, forcing herself to snap out of it and focus. A feast is laid out before them, featuring steak, salmon, and a massive lobster. She digs in with pure joy, internally cheering for the glorious food of the isekai noble life. Over dinner, her father talks about a parent's worry, and Edith immediately knows his scheme is starting. He asks if his daughter could bring a few of her own maids, claiming they would serve her better. Then, with a sly grin, he asks Duke Rudwick if the Duchess brought her own maids when she married. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a steak knife. A chilling silence falls over the dining table as everyone processes the blatant power move. Edith knows they can't refuse, but she thinks to herself not to worry. She plays her part, smiling sweetly and telling her father she's really fine on her own. She continues the act, putting on a radiant smile for the Rudwicks. Later, in private, her father explodes in fury, grabbing the blonde man and shouting, "Are you crazy?" Edith calmly interrupts, telling her father that this is where the real game begins. She explains that openly demanding maids raised suspicion, while the blonde man adds that spies would be useless if they were already doubted. Her father scoffs, questioning what she could possibly accomplish by going in alone. Edith lays out her strategy. She'll go alone to make them drop their guard, all while the blonde man thinks about allies. Once she's earned their trust, she'll fake homesickness and bring one of their own maids in as a spy. Her father strokes his goatee, contemplating her cunning plan with a thoughtful expression. The scene shifts back to the wedding, where her father smugly thinks he never has to visit their house again. Edith and her groom stand before the priest, ready to begin the ceremony. An adorable ring bearer and flower girl make their way down the aisle.
Edith can't help but smile, thinking they're absolutely cute. Her groom, Killian, glares at her, and she mentally teases him, thinking she knows exactly what's on his mind. The wedding rings are presented on a delicate lace pillow.
He slides the diamond ring onto her finger with practiced indifference.
She smirks, noting how he despises even touching her for a few seconds. With a confident smile, she calls him childish under her breath.
But her expression falters when she sees him suddenly clutch his chest, looking startled. As laughter fills the air, Edith looks away, a blush creeping up her neck. She clenches her fist, the new ring a heavy weight on her finger. She reaffirms her resolve. This changes nothing, and she has no intention of chasing after him. She gently pats the flower girl's head, telling the children they did a good job, while Killian looks on disapprovingly. The new couple stand side by side, their faces unreadable, the ceremony complete but their future uncertain. In a grand sunlit hall, Edith and Killian stand before the priest, their marriage ceremony underway. Later, Edith sits alone in her room, thinking her new life feels like just another change of clothes. She stretches, complaining that the original Edith's dress was too tight and her heels too high, but decides she has to get used to it. Knock knock. As she brushes her hair, she casually tells the visitor to come in. A voice calls out her name, and Edith turns, surprised by the interruption. It's Elise, the heroine, looking timid at the door as Edith asks what she needs. Elise hesitates, unsure of how to begin the conversation. Gathering her courage, she gives a formal greeting to Lady Edith. Suddenly, Edith remembers this exact scene from the novel. She recalls how Elise came to apologize for Killian's coldness, but the original Edith saw it as a calculated insult. In the story, the villainess flew into a rage, accusing Elise of wearing white to her wedding and declaring herself Killian's true wife. The memory shows a terrified Elise reeling from the verbal assault, but the new Edith smirks, thinking the original actually had a point. I mean, who wears white to someone else's wedding? Back in the present, Elise begins her apology on Killian's behalf, hoping Edith won't resent him. She explains that he's actually the most sensitive person she knows, despite his cold exterior. Edith is completely disarmed, thinking to herself, how could I ever hate someone this pretty? The narration describes Elise's angelic features, from her radiant blonde hair to her crystal clear eyes. She's not just beautiful, she's praised for having a heart full of kindness and justice. Edith knows the truth. To survive as the villainess, befriending the heroine is mission critical. Playing her part perfectly, Edith gives a warm smile and tells Elise not to worry. She reassures the stunned Elise that, despite the arranged marriage, she holds no resentment for her new husband. Elise looks on, completely moved by Edith's unexpected kindness. Edith knows this is a crucial moment handling. This right is key to her survival in the dukedom. Elise beams with relief, thinking that Lady Edith is far more mature and kind than she ever expected. Overwhelmed by the pure-hearted praise, Edith feels a wave of secondhand embarrassment. She deflects, telling Elise she could never compare to her beauty, and compliments her dress. Elise becomes flustered by the sudden praise, not knowing how to respond. A maid arrives with a towel, and Edith realizes she's kept her guest for too long. She waves goodbye, wishing Elise a good night and internally gushing over how cute she is. With a sigh of relief, Edith wonders if the dramatic wedding episode is finally over. Finally alone, she lets her guard down, ready to relax after a long day. She sinks into a luxurious, steaming bath, letting the stress melt away. Rose petals float around her as she soaks in the opulent tub. She muses that living as a duke's daughter-in-law is amazing. Who needs the internet when there's no work or chores? She happily daydreams about her future, filled with operas, hunting competitions, parties, and balls. Her blissful moment is shattered by a cold voice pointing out she's bathing before her groom has even arrived. Standing in the doorway is her new husband, Killian, calling her a, quote, cruel bride. Edith is completely stunned, her eyes wide as she recognizes him. He scoffs at her surprise, asking who else she expected to enter the bride's chamber on their wedding night. She forces a smile, awkwardly admitting she didn't think he would actually show up. He seems pleased by her honesty, remarking that she at least has some self-awareness. She recalls how he purposely made it difficult for her to wear the wedding ring, a clear sign of his disdain. Leaning closer, he mockingly asks if she was expecting some kind of passionate romance from him. She can't help but think how unfair it is for someone to be so wicked and so handsome at the same time. She decides not to rise to his bait, realizing she's too tired to get angry with him.
She calmly explains that since he avoided all contact with her, she simply assumed he wouldn't come to her room.
Then she cuts to the chase, bluntly asking if he plans on spending the night. Thump. Taken aback by her direct question, he turns and storms out of the room without a word. Left alone in the tub, Edith is utterly baffled. Why did he even come here in the first place? Meanwhile, Killian marches down a dark corridor, his brisk pace betraying his inner turmoil. A voice calls out his name, Killian, as he walks away with a grim expression. He turns to find Elise, who asks if he was the one who just came out of the bride's room. He looks at her intently, his voice soft as he says her name. Elise. She explains that the bride was half asleep in the tub, then trails off, confused about what she saw. A dark-haired man gently pats her head, telling her that her problem is seeing only the good in people. He reassures her that she doesn't need to worry about it, but Elise looks startled as she realizes the implications for Lady Edith. Killian's face hardens as he demands to know what Edith said to her. Elise explains that Edith complimented her dress, and she now worries she was too obviously happy about it. Killian scoffs, questioning why Edith would get angry over clothes that Elise didn't even choose herself. He calls the bride a nitpicker and asks Elise to imagine how Edith must have felt hearing the compliment. He flashes back to the wedding, thinking that Edith's dress wasn't just a concern, it was flashy, tasteless, and extravagant. In a final, brutal judgment, he thinks to himself that her whole look was simply vulgar. Elise recoils in shock, shouting, "Killian, how could you call your own wife vulgar?" He turns away coldly, calling Elise cruel and asking if that's all she has to say to him as she tries to stammer a reply. Elise stands stunned and speechless, her hand clutching her dress. Killian begins to tell her how he really felt about the whole situation, but they're interrupted by a smug voice. It's Cliff, asking what the two of them are doing together so late at night. Elise's face immediately brightens as she greets Cliff, leaving Killian to fume in the shadows. The next morning, Edith stretches dramatically. She sits up in bed, amazed that her new body feels perfectly fine after the stress of her wedding day. She can't believe it. This is the stamina of a healthy 22-year-old. She's never felt so good in her life. Deciding to look on the bright side, she focuses on her new, healthy body and the chance to become an adorable daughter-in-law. She muses that while Killian is a supporting character hopelessly devoted to Elise, his parents might be different. She recalls how warmly the Duke and Duchess welcomed Elise and hopes they'll eventually accept her too. With newfound determination, she decides her first move is to go greet them properly. After all, the #1 rule for a reincarnated villainess is to win over the major side characters. She knows that to survive here, her in-laws' approval is way more important than her husband's. Her ultimate goal is simple: live a quiet, cozy life filled with lavish desserts and delicious meals. And to do that, she needs to earn the Rudwick couple's trust, starting with a polite morning greeting. Spotting a servant bell, she's delighted to use the classic isekai tool. Ring ring! With some help from the maids, this should be easy. A maid named Anna appears instantly, and Edith asks for help getting ready for the day. Edith crosses her arms, asking for the maid's name again. "Anna, my lady," she replies. Surveying her wardrobe, Edith is horrified. Are all the clothes I brought this revealing and flashy? Anna quietly confirms they are. Edith cringes, imagining the terrible first impression she'd make greeting her in-laws in such an outfit.
She immediately orders Anna to take the dress and alter the chest to be more modest, removing all the tacky decor.
Holding up a lacy undergarment, she resolves to get all her other dresses fixed too.
She suddenly remembers last night was her wedding night and briefly considers scattering rose petals on the bed. Nah, she dismisses the thought, knowing Killian would just roll his eyes. He's the type to save himself for Elise anyway. She giggles to herself, calling him a good-looking virgin, but admitting the trope feels a bit forced. A brief flashback shows Killian's intense gaze as he loomed over her in the bathtub. As Anna finishes her hair, Edith is still lost in thought, daydreaming about his impressive chest. She shakes her head, snapping out of it and scolding her former self, Choi Suna, for being crazy. Now properly dressed, she approaches the Duke and Duchess with a serene smile, offering a formal morning greeting. The Duke and Duchess sit stiffly on the sofa, their expressions unreadable. But the Duchess's face softens into a warm smile, telling Edith she must be tired and inviting her to sit. Edith is relieved to see a teacup has already been prepared just for her. The Duchess praises her elegance, but Edith knows it's just flattery and takes a sly sip of tea. The Duke cuts in, putting her on the spot by asking about the duties of a wife in a noble house. Thank goodness for the original Edith's memories. She coolly explains it involves managing finances and documents. The Duke seems impressed. He informs her their household has its own methods and asks if she's willing to learn, to which she eagerly agrees. The Duke gives her a backhanded compliment, saying it seems her father, the Count, taught her that much at least. Edith's hands tremble on her teacup as she realizes their true intent. They weren't just testing her, they were accusing her of being a spy. She quickly composes herself, putting on a perfect, serene smile and taking a calm sip of tea. Not today, Satan. The Duke and Duchess exchange a look, still unconvinced and observing her every move. But the Duchess offers a thin smile, glad Edith is aware of her education, and offers her a job assisting with Duchess duties in 2 weeks. The Duchess's real thoughts are savage. She internally scorns Edith for not even sleeping in the bridal chamber, but still offers to find a, quote, suitable person for her. Yikes. Gulp. Finally free, Edith stumbles out of the room, gasping for air. She felt like she was going to suffocate under the pressure. A man's voice asks if she's all right, and she immediately plasters on a smile, brushing it off as just a case of the nerves. Her rescuer is a handsome man with light brown hair and glasses, his expression stern but concerned. Playing her part, Edith beams and tells him it's a pleasure to meet him, looking forward to working together. Turns out this is Viscount Renan Filch, the Duke's aide, assigned to teach her. She also realizes her maid, Anna, is a new character, making her nervous about the plot's unpredictability. Renan cuts right to the chase, bluntly asking if she has any difficulties walking. He clarifies that he's busy and can't waste time, to which Edith cheerfully agrees to start the tour immediately. As they walk, she wonders if being painfully direct is a personality trait for all the new characters not from the original story. Their first stop is the jewelry exhibition room, where the family's most precious jewels are kept for important events. Next is the armory, a space for managing weapons and armor used by the Duke and his sons, all crafted by renowned artisans. Renan then leads her to the heart of the estate, a grand library filled with countless rare books. Edith follows Renan, a genuine smile on her face as she takes in the breathtaking sights of her new home. She's ecstatic, remembering how she couldn't even afford museum tickets in her past life. Now, she's literally living in one. Renan then introduces her to the magnificent Sistine Hall, and Edith is completely awestruck. They stroll through the stunning gallery, surrounded by statues and bathed in golden sunlight. Overwhelmed, Edith gushes her thanks to Renan, saying his pleasant tour made her forget how fast time was passing. Her sincere praise catches him completely off guard, and the stoic aide blushes and quickly looks away. Trying to regain his composure, Renan points to a balcony, calling it the Hall of Contests. Edith looks puzzled by the name. He explains it's simply a wonderful spot to admire the courtyard as they look out over the lush gardens. But the view reveals an unexpected scene. Elise is having a cozy tea time in a gazebo with both Cliff and Killian. Awkward. A closer look shows Elise happily chatting, while Killian smirks beside her. The three of them look way too comfortable together. The scene lingers on Edith's face as she silently takes in the view from above. She continues to watch them from the balcony, her expression unreadable. Her gaze remains fixed on the trio below, a quiet storm brewing behind her eyes. She turns to Renan, identifying Lords Cliff and Killian, and dryly thinking to herself how beautiful the sight is. She internally notes that for her groom to be having drinks with another woman this early is a perfectly normal reaction for him. She can't help but wonder how the original villainess, Edith, would have reacted to this blatant disrespect. Down in the gazebo, Cliff flashes a smug grin, clearly enjoying the moment. Edith's expression hardens as she watches the scene unfold, her patience wearing thin. But instead of exploding, she turns away with a serene smile, commenting on how lovely the garden will be in the spring. Renan seems to see right through her act, giving her a look that says, "I understand, but..." Edith cuts the tour short, reminding Renan that he's busy and suggesting they leave now. Later, the Duke sits at his desk and asks for a report on Edith's behavior. Renan reports that she had a good grasp of the mansion's layout, and particularly enjoyed the art gallery. He adds that, contrary to the rumors, she was dignified and displayed no bad behavior at all. Then Renan drops the bomb. He saw the two young lords having tea with Lady Elise. The Duke is stunned into silence. The Duke seethes, remembering he ordered Killian to behave, only for his son to be seen with another woman right after his wedding. In a flashback, Killian coldly told his father not to pressure him. The Duke knew his son was defiant, but he did it anyway. Renan explains that instead of causing a disturbance, Edith simply moved on as if she'd seen nothing. Intrigued, the Duke strokes his chin and muses that this Edith Riegelhoff is quite an unusual woman. After her long day, Edith finally gets a meal, and Anna politely offers to tidy up for her. Edith makes small talk with Anna, explaining she used to save money by not eating out, so she feels awkward just sitting still. She gives a self-deprecating smile, wondering aloud if she sounds suspicious when she says things like that. Leaning back with a sigh of relief, Edith feels she handled the in-laws well. Now, the only problem left is how to deal with Elise. The story begins with Elise, an illegitimate child whose siblings made her life a living hell with constant torment. But her luck turned when she saved the Duchess, catching the eye of the Duke's family, while her own cruel relatives were left in the dust. This mirrors our hero's past life, where she was abused by her boss at work and escaped into the pages of web novels. Now reincarnated as the fiery redhead, Edith, she decides to stop worrying about a past that's gone and focus on living for herself. Looking out her window, she spots a familiar sight from the novel, the main character, Elise, reading peacefully under a tree. Instead of moping, Edith decides to take charge and try to get on the protagonist's good side. But before she can make a move, a handsome man with black hair approaches Elise, who explains she's studying because she never had a formal education. With a bashful smile, Elise admits she's terrified of embarrassing herself in front of the Duke. The man, Killian, offers his full support, telling her that her happiness is all that matters. A real Prince Charming moment. From the window above, Edith watches the tender scene unfold, a silent observer in her own home. Suddenly, a sharp crash shatters the quiet moment. Elsewhere, a blonde woman named Layla Sinclair is in a full-blown rage, screaming, "Why her of all people?" Her brother enters, asking what's wrong, but she just snaps back at him, furious that he doesn't already know. She finally explodes with the news. Edith Riegelhoff married Killian Rudwicks. Her brother Damien Sinclair just smirks. He casually insults the Duke's taste in women, which only makes Layla angrier, while another woman in the room glares in disapproval. Layla demands to know what her brother is hiding, but he just gives her a sly, all-knowing grin. She presses him again, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Brother!" Damien's smirk only widens, clearly enjoying his little secret. Fed up, Layla demands he spit it out already. Taking a leisurely sip of tea, Damien just comments on her fiery temper. He then tells her to use her brain, asking what the Riegelhoff and Rudwick families could possibly gain from this marriage. He drops a major hint. Count Riegelhoff holds the distribution rights to the southern iron mines, the key ingredient for making weapons. Layla scoffs, annoyed that he's talking about boring topics like weapons that she knows nothing about. Damien patronizingly calls her his adorable little sister, and asks if she has any clue about how political power is divided. He explains the empire is split between Duke Langston, who's aiming for the throne, and the faction loyal to the emperor. Control of weapons could tip the scales, and the leader of the emperor's faction, Duke Rudwick, couldn't risk letting those resources fall into his rival's hands. But Lila's still not satisfied, screaming that a political alliance doesn't explain why they had to get married. Damien grins wickedly, asking if Count Riegelhoff really seems like a man who can be controlled with anything less. In a chilling flashback, another man seethes with rage, calling someone a stupid girl. It's Count Riegelhoff, brutally berating the original Edith and demanding to know why she can't do anything right. A tearful Edith begs her father for forgiveness, but he coldly threatens to starve her for a week if she fails her next spy mission. So much for the arrogant, villainous rumors. A blonde man who witnessed the abuse looks on in complete shock, covering his mouth in horror. Back in the present, Damien assures his sister that what he's telling her is the absolute truth, because he heard it himself. The scene shifts back to our new Edith, calmly reading a book, but a jolt of recognition hits her. This is a scene straight from the original novel, where the villainous Edith tormented the innocent Elise. Just then, the Duchess enters, announcing that their lesson is over for the day and she may come in. As the Duchess flips through a fashion catalog, she sighs that her taste has become predictable with age. She smiles, reminiscing as she looks through the familiar designs. Edith steels herself, knowing the outcome is already decided. Elise has been with the Duchess for 5 years. There's no way Edith can compete with that. Wah! She internally freaks out, realizing she's completely clueless about this world's fashion, having only seen it in illustrations. Elise, ever the perfect heroine, cheerfully asks the Duchess for her opinion on a design. She points to an elegant blue silk dress, suggesting it would be a perfect fit. The Duchess is delighted. A maid adds that the silk is top quality, supplied directly to the royal palace. Talk about a protagonist's buff. The maid continues her flattery, noting the blue would perfectly match the Duchess's hazel eyes. But Edith decides to shake things up, smoothly praising Elise's choice before suggesting they try something new. Her unexpected interruption catches the Duchess's attention, who looks up from her book with a curious expression. Edith smiles confidently, suggesting a fresh style might be a nice change of pace. She points out a bold, sophisticated gown, and the Duchess is immediately impressed, exclaiming that Edith has impeccable taste for such a rare color combination. With her 21st century fashion sense, Edith knew this modern, elegant design was a risk worth taking. The Duchess hesitates, admitting the dress is beautiful but wondering if it's too extravagant for her, a sentiment Elise quickly agrees with. While the Duchess calmly flips through the catalog, Edith slumps in defeat, overwhelmed by the feeling that she's already lost this battle. She reminds herself that she's not even trying to win this competition. Getting on the Duchess's good side would only paint a bigger target on her back later. Edith lays on the flattery thick, telling the Duchess she has the elegance for the dress. The Duchess blushes, pleased, and agrees to trust both her and Elise's taste. With her own outfit decided, the Duchess turns her attention to Elise, offering to pick something for her. Elise looks completely taken by surprise. Elise humbly refuses, waving her hands and insisting that a dress she already owns is perfectly fine. Ignoring her protests, Edith dives into the catalog, confidently picking out options that would be perfect for Elise at a spring tea party. She expertly explains her choice, noting how a specific shade of pink would perfectly complement Elise's fair skin and rosy cheeks. The Duchess is impressed by Edith's fashion sense and suggests another popular style, while a flustered Elise keeps insisting she's fine. A designer joins in, suggesting a more relaxed chemise. Edith agrees, adding that an aquamarine gem would be the perfect accent. After successfully picking out 5 outfits for Elise, Edith wryly comments to the Duchess on how difficult the decisions were. The Duchess then insists Edith pick a dress for herself, but Edith cleverly pivots, asking the designer if she does alterations instead. The designer happily confirms she can do alterations, much to Edith's relief. She's got a plan. With everything set, Edith calls for her maid, Anna, to bring in the outfits she wants amended. Time for survival rule number 1 in a Villainess story. Completely reverse your public image. She hands over the original Edith's flashy wardrobe, asking for the gaudy jewels to be removed and the revealing necklines to be covered up. The designer notes her sudden change in taste, and Edith just smiles mysteriously, saying it's something like that. From the doorway, the Duchess and Elise watch in quiet surprise as Edith's transformation begins. Whew! With her wardrobe makeover complete, Edith stretches in satisfaction, feeling like she's accomplished a major mission. But her inner thoughts reveal her true capitalist genius. She's wondering just how much cash she can get for all those discarded diamonds. She steals her resolve, knowing that if she just keeps making smart moves like this, she might actually survive. Her moment of triumph is cut short when she turns to find her husband, Killian, standing silently in the doorway. He just stares at her with his signature cold, unreadable expression. Well, this can't be good. What's going on? She asks, but he simply commands, "Follow me." As he leads her down the hall, he finally explains, Elise has invited her to tea. Edith is shocked this wasn't in the original novel. She has no idea what's about to happen, but she knows she's walking into a trap. Following him, she figures Elise must have forced him to come get her. No way he'd do it on his own. But as he walks, she can't help but check him out, admiring his broad shoulders and promising to only modestly appreciate the view. Wham! He suddenly turns around, and she flinches, completely busted for staring. Mortified, she puts on a hilariously awkward grin, knowing she's been caught red-handed. Killian starts to warn her, and she immediately panics, apologizing profusely in her head. His warning is simple and chilling. Be careful with what you say in front of Elise. He then twists the knife, declaring Elise is more precious than family and far more important than a vulgar woman like her. She calmly thinks, "Oh, is that all?" She looks him dead in the eye and sarcastically replies, "Wow, do you only aim to hurt me?" Her sharp retort actually catches him off guard as she calls him a snake instead of a human. Edith presses her advantage, coolly asking if she should treat Elise with the same politeness he's showing her. He snaps, grabbing her arm in fury and warning her not to test his honor. She's seething inside but keeps her composure, knowing this is a separate battle. A tense silence hangs between them as they stand in a silent standoff, the air thick with unspoken hostility. The scene flashes forward to the tea party, where Edith puts on her happy face and politely thanks Elise for the invitation. The 4 of them, Edith, Elise, Killian, and Cliff, sit at the table in the most awkward tea party of all time. Cliff, Killian's older brother, tries to break the tension, commenting that Edith seems to be adapting well. Then he smirks, stirring the pot by asking why the newlyweds haven't gone on a trip together yet. Playing along, Edith shoots back a sly comment, asking if he's just trying to get Killian out of the way so he can have Elise all to himself. Cliff thoughtfully considers her joke and agrees, suggesting Killian should go inspect the territories now that winter is over. He smiles, clearly pleased with this new plan that gets his brother out of the picture. The suggestion, however, leaves Elise looking visibly worried and upset. Killian immediately jumps in to defend Elise, telling his brother to stop making things difficult for her. He then glares at Edith, saying he can't leave because Elise would be in even more trouble with just her around. Edith silently concedes he has a point, The image perfectly captures the dynamic. Elise stands innocently between the two protective brothers, who are united in their mission to guard her. The narrator explains the social danger. If Killian, a married man, spends too much time with Elise, it will inevitably lead to damaging rumors about her. Cliff sips his tea with a knowing look, musing that the protagonist Elise has a different way of thinking, completely unaware of the political games at play. Edith feigns surprise at Cliff's question, asking him to clarify if he wants her thoughts. He smirks, spelling out his plan. He's leaving, so how does she feel about being left alone with Killian and Elise? This image contains a behind-the-scenes note from the creative team about their work on the chapter. A credit page acknowledges the creative team responsible for bringing the story to life. Cliff continues stirring the pot, asking Elise and Killian if being left with just his wife would be awkward for them. Edith is momentarily speechless, shocked by his blatant attempt to cause trouble. Her expression hardens as she realizes just how ridiculously obvious his manipulative game is. Cliff just smirks, clearly enjoying the uncomfortable atmosphere he's created. Edith internally scoffs, thinking that good manners are a rare commodity in this household. She takes a calm sip of tea, deciding with a shrug that she just doesn't care. Her simple, dismissive "what?" catches both brothers completely off guard. She cleverly flips the script, pointing out that, as the successor, it's Cliff's duty to do the inspection, and she certainly can't order Killian to go in his place. Sipping her tea, she admits to herself that she might have been a bit too aggressive with that comeback. She reflects that it was a bold suggestion, considering the travel would be a burden, and Elise isn't even his wife. Elise watches the exchange with a quiet, calculating look, her true thoughts hidden behind a faint smile. Edith glances over, her expression serious as she tries to read the seemingly innocent heroine. Elise lets out a small gasp, her wide-eyed innocence back in full force. Elise is stunned, wondering if her eyes are playing tricks on her after witnessing Edith's sharp retort. Edith calmly sips her tea, thinking that whatever just happened, Elise isn't the one she's actually wronged here. Cliff mockingly praises Edith's generous heart, but Edith's inner thoughts reveal she sees him for what he is, the unlucky male lead of this story. The scene fades to a quiet, starry night at the grand Rudwicks estate. Killian stands alone on a balcony, lost in thought under the moonlight. He stares into the distance, his expression somber and conflicted. He wonders why she acted that way, remembering a time when she praised him as kind and understanding, vowing to be just like him. Elise finds him on the terrace, asking why he's out so late. He turns, acknowledging her presence. She looks up at him with concern, asking if something is wrong. He puts on a gentle smile, trying to reassure her that everything is perfectly fine. Elise mentions hearing about the new dresses he ordered for her, adding that his mother was pleased, but she feels bad for the trouble. Killian softly tells her not to feel sorry, explaining that his mother always longed for a daughter. He adds that, if anything, they should be the ones thanking her for taking such good care of their family. A family portrait shows the Duchess surrounded by her husband and two sons, all in military attire, highlighting her wish for a daughter. Elise gently suggests that buying dresses for Edith, his actual wife, would have made his mother even happier. Killian's pleasant expression vanishes as he snaps, "What are you talking about?" His mind flashes to Edith, choosing to alter her dresses instead of buying new ones. He scoffs internally, thinking she's too good for new clothes, but has no problem picking them for others. His anger builds as he remembers her vulgar wedding dress, convinced she's just protesting the dressmaker.
He recalls her modest act, admitting that her very presence bothers him now, especially when she's exposed. He internally calls her disgusting, his mind filled with conflicting images of her, even one of her in the bath.
The turmoil in his mind is reflected in a glitchy, fractured close-up of her eyes before the scene goes dark. He grabs his head, grimacing in frustration as if fighting a painful headache. Elise watches with wide-eyed concern as he silently struggles with his inner conflict. He's convinced Edith is just putting on an act, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal her fangs, as a worried Elise calls out his name. He resolves to find a different designer, one capable of satisfying her supposedly extraordinary tastes. He sees it as a necessary evil he must endure for the sake of his family's reputation. Back in her room, Edith's maid Anna asks if she should summon a perfume artisan for her. Edith looks up, surprised by the unexpected offer of perfume. Her first thought is pure panic. Does this mean she'll have to spend her own hard-earned cash? She thinks back to her secret stash of coins and jewels, salvaged from her old dresses as a safety net for her precarious position. She lets out a nervous laugh, trying to play it cool, despite her internal budget crisis. She reflects on her past life, where she avoided such luxuries because she didn't want to be reminded that no one loved her. But now, she decides it's time to live a little. With a bright, confident smile, Edith tells Anna to make the call, ready to indulge in some well-deserved luxury. The perfume artisan arrives, laying out a stunning collection of ornate bottles on the table. Edith sits with a strained smile, internally reeling in disbelief, wondering what on earth she just heard. Her internal panic continues as she struggles to process what's happening. The artisan, a dapper man with glasses, presents a sample, introducing it as their finest rose-scented perfume. Edith gives a polite but slightly awkward smile, trying to keep her composure with her maid Anna by her side. The artisan explains that titania roses are common, but their heavy scent is too much for a young person, so he recommends she stick with her current Ashley Rose perfume and maybe add some lighter notes to it. Hearing the combination would cost around 200,000 zenas, Edith is thrown into a financial panic, mentally converting the price and realizing just how broke she's about to be. With a bright, fake smile, Edith politely declines, saying she doesn't want to change her current scent. Anna, however, steps in with a suggestion. Why not just mix a little Nathaniel Rose scent into her existing perfume? The maid gently explains that now that Edith is married, a deeper, more mature scent would be a good change. The artisan quotes the new, lower price of 130,000 zenas, but Edith still hesitates. A sly grin spreads across her face as she decides to go on the offensive, asking if he could possibly let it go for 120,000. Her haggling catches the artisan completely off guard, leaving him flustered as she thoughtfully considers her next move. Edith counters with a hilariously specific offer. How about 120,500? This woman knows how to bargain. She cleverly frames her penny pinching as a desire not to appear wasteful, promising him her future business in exchange for the discount. The artisan, thoroughly impressed by her sharp wit, finally relents, admitting the young duke has found himself quite a wife. He accepts the deal, and Edith lights up with a triumphant, "Thank you!" Later, Edith slumps at the table, completely drained, and complaining about the insane prices as Anna offers to organize her new cosmetics. She descends into a full-on dramatic breakdown, weeping that she's going to lose all sense of the value of money. Sitting alone, she laments that her constant hesitation meant she couldn't even buy the things she truly wanted. She sighs, realizing her secret emergency fund is basically pocket change in this ridiculously expensive world. With her hands clasped, she wonders if there's anyone more pathetic than her having money, but being too afraid to spend it. The memory of her older brother taking her salary in her past life surfaces, filling her with a renewed sense of guilt. But she quickly shakes off the melancholy with a huge, dramatic stretch, ready to change her mood. A brilliant idea strikes, and her face lights up with a determined, confident smile. The scene shifts as she walks through a magnificent, sun-drenched art gallery within the estate. She marvels at the luxury, feeling as though she's rented out an entire art museum just for herself. Her chibi form appears, grumbling to herself and wondering why he is trying to pick another fight. It's Killian, of course, standing stiffly beside her with his arms crossed, towering over her tiny, cute form. Back in her normal proportions, she gazes thoughtfully at a painting, pondering how a single piece of art can hold so much emotion. She analyzes a dramatic painting of a warrior on horseback, observing how it captures the misery of war while also showing the warrior's deep desire to end the tragedy. Killian remains silent beside her, listening to her interpretation with an unreadable expression. He suddenly speaks, revealing the art was made to commemorate his grandfather's victory, catching Edith by surprise. Her eyes widen as she puts the pieces together, realizing who the stoic warrior in the painting must be modeled after. He seems genuinely surprised that she didn't know this bit of family history, and she confirms she had no idea. He questions her sudden interest in art, but she brushes him off, saying it's normal for preferences to change as you get older. She claims to be a total novice who doesn't know any artists, prompting him to ask if she truly doesn't know a single one. A sly, knowing smile plays on her lips as she turns, a mischievous plan clearly forming in her mind. Her sudden movement startles Killian as the sound of her footsteps echoes in the hall. She walks past him toward another part of the gallery, and he watches her, perplexed. His eyes suddenly widen in dawning horror as he realizes which painting she's heading towards. A flashback reveals his mortifying secret. As a young man, he was forced to pose as a model for a rather revealing painting. Edith pretends to ponder the artwork while Killian panics behind her, knowing he's about to be exposed. He nervously asks what she's looking at, and she plays dumb, saying it's nothing in particular. She turns, standing in front of a completely innocent painting of sheep, a perfect misdirection that leaves him baffled. Killian gives her a sharp, suspicious look, not quite buying her act. Realization dawns, and his face flushes with pure, unadulterated embarrassment. He's been had. He completely loses his cool, shouting that there's no way a noble son would pose like that. She coolly replies, "I didn't even ask," and he can only grit his teeth in fury. Fuming, he declares it's impossible to have a real conversation with her and storms off as she smirks, savoring her victory. With a calm, satisfied expression, she watches him retreat down the grand hallway. Round 1 goes to Edith. The scene opens in a breathtakingly bright and airy glass conservatory, filled with lush plants and sunlight. Edith strolls through the garden in a beautiful pink dress, thinking this luxurious life is all she could ever wish for. A close-up on her elegant purple heels highlights her new, opulent lifestyle. She laughs with pure joy, completely lost in the beautiful moment. She reflects on all the new perks of her life, like having constant access to the estate's magnificent art gallery, not to mention the endless supply of luxurious cosmetics and the fine dining she enjoys at every single meal. And while most people here are still suspicious, she's grateful that her maid, Anna, has always been kind to her. But there's something else on her mind as she looks ahead with a thoughtful expression. Her eyes land on a man with long blonde hair and glasses standing on a nearby walkway, clutching several scrolls. She hesitates for a moment before deciding it's nothing, leaving the man confused by her sudden stare. With a friendly little wave, she turns and continues her walk, leaving him behind. The blonde-haired man watches her go, a curious and slightly bemused look on his face. He adjusts his glasses, his expression turning serious as he ponders their brief encounter. Edith slips away to a more secluded spot, placing her hand against the rough bark of a large tree. She reveals the real reason for her morning walks, a perfect vantage point to watch shirtless men training. The sound of swords clashing fills the air as two men spar intensely in the courtyard. Peeking from behind the tree, Edith blushes, noting that her husband is looking particularly good today. Her mind goes into overdrive, admiring his muscular chest, defined abs, and powerful back as he trains. Whoosh! He swings his sword. She admits that even though he's mean, he's undeniably handsome, and definitely more her type than Cliff. But the moment is shattered when Killian stops and gives a warm, friendly wave to Elise, who is watching from the castle wall. Edith's smile vanishes, replaced by a look of quiet disappointment. She thinks to herself, "So you also know how to make that kind of expression." Later, while writing at her desk, she reflects on her past life as Choi Suna, realizing she's never been so foolish over someone before. Elise finds her working, and Edith proudly explains she's organizing documents into, quote, table forms, leaving Elise utterly confused. As Elise questions the concept, a horrifying thought strikes Edith. What if spreadsheets don't even exist in this world? Her mind races, realizing the author of this story might have omitted table charts for dramatic effect. She concludes that long, descriptive documents probably just made for better storytelling. Deciding to play it safe, she thinks that the brilliant Lady Elise will surely come up with a better solution. Elise voices her concern, gently suggesting that this new table method might be confusing for other people. Their conversation is cut short when the Duchess enters the room, asking if there's a problem. Elise smoothly covers for them, saying she was just helping Edith with something. The Duchess smiles, thanking Elise for helping Edith, which seems to catch Edith completely by surprise. The moment triggers a painful memory from her past life, where her boss scolded her for poorly made documents. The feeling of inadequacy is all too familiar. Shaking it off, Edith decides to take a risk and asks the Duchess for her opinion on the table form she created. She presents her work, explaining it was her solution for organizing the massive amount of information. She then details her system of listing armor names and data side by side. As Elise watches silently, Edith points out how adding columns for quantity and price makes the whole document much easier to read. Elise's expression is unreadable as she listens to Edith's confident explanation. Edith suddenly panics, worrying she's overstepped her bounds, and acted just like the villainess from the novel. But her fear is interrupted by the Duchess's shocked exclamation, "Oh my God, Edith!" The Duchess is absolutely thrilled, calling the idea brilliant and declaring she'll use this method from now on, leaving Edith speechless. In a stunning turn of events, the Duchess officially puts Edith in charge of organizing all documents this way, so others can learn from her. Edith can hardly contain her joy, her face lighting up with a brilliant, triumphant smile. Later, Edith is enthusiastically explaining her system to the Duchess, who listens intently, while Elise watches from the sidelines. A close-up on Elise reveals a cold, shadowed expression, her bright demeanor gone. The scene shifts to Killian, holding the very same document and examining it with a serious look. His mother, the Duchess, stands beside him, chuckling and confirming that Edith created it. With Elise listening in the background, the Duchess proudly comments that Edith seems to be a very smart woman. Killian concedes that the format is certainly more efficient, which prompts his mother to softly say his name. He turns to face her, waiting to hear what she has to say. With a gentle but meaningful look, she reminds him that Edith had to leave her entire life behind to come to their family. With a gentle touch on his arm, the Duchess tries to reason with her son. She looks at Killian with sad eyes, asking if he couldn't show Edith even a little compassion. The scene shifts to a serious-looking man with long blonde hair and glasses, holding a document. He enters the room, apologizing to the young master for interrupting and offering to return later. But Killian stops him, calling him Lennon and saying he has something important to show him. He reveals he's talking about the documents Edith prepared that morning, his expression unreadable. Elise stands nearby, holding the papers and looking a bit anxious. Killian turns to Elise, asking for her opinion on the documents that so impressed his mother. She nervously agrees with the Duchess, a strained smile on her face. Killian remarks to Lennon that Edith seems to be quite a knowledgeable woman. Elise clenches her fists, thinking how different Edith is, learning so much faster than she ever could. Killian watches her reaction, confirming his suspicion that something is off with her. A memory surfaces of the Duchess telling a younger Elise, called Ryzen, that she's only able to help because of 4 years of training, implying Elise's envy is understandable. But a vision of Edith in a striking black gown declares that being trained doesn't make someone smarter. Killian connects the dots, realizing his suspicions about Edith from the art gallery weren't entirely wrong after all. As evening falls, the grand estate glitters under a twilight sky. The next morning, Edith is startled to find Killian already in her room. He stands before her, dressed in a formal uniform, his expression cold and imposing. Playing it cool, she greets him with a bright smile, asking what brings him here so early. She playfully leans in, teasingly asking if he came because he missed her. He immediately turns his back, and she realizes that's definitely not it, asking if he's here to rush her out.
With a seductive smile, she challenges him, asking him if he'd stay longer if she asked him to. He coldly states that he never learned how to lose, pondering what it would even feel like. She smirks, enjoying their little game, but a sudden wave of caution makes her think she should probably ease up a bit.
Her demeanor softens as she reflects that for once, she didn't feel the usual suspicious stares from everyone yesterday.
Her chibi form pops up, realizing Killian must be here because Ryzen was upset, ready to defend her.
Deciding to head him off with small talk, she cheerfully comments on the lovely weather. He bluntly shuts her down, remarking that the morning wind feels chilly. She turns to leave, reaching for the door to the balcony. Wham! He slams his hand against the door, blocking her exit. Trapped between him and the door, she stares up at him in shock. He presses forward, pinning her against the wall as she stammers his name in alarm. Leaning in so close she can feel his breath, she panics, her heart pounding at his proximity. He whispers, questioning her taste and asking if the elegant workshop his mother uses wasn't good enough for her. She looks up, utterly bewildered by his question, as he stares down at her in silence. He reminds her of her reputation for never wearing a dress twice, calling her bluff about not wanting a new one.
A dangerous smirk plays on his lips as he tells her he has plenty of ways to accommodate her expensive tastes.
Pushing against the door, she internally fumes, wondering why he'd resent her for simply trying to change her image. He offers to arrange a shopping trip, but she's had enough and forcefully shoves him away. "You know nothing about me," she screams, her eyes blazing with fury. She fiercely defends herself, asking if he really thinks she was trying to fool people with such a petty trick. Her voice cracks with emotion as she clutches her chest, lamenting that she's always the one at fault, before screaming, "Is that all you want?" For the first time, Killian looks completely stunned by her outburst. A flashback shows their cold, distant wedding day, as she thinks she knew his feelings from the very start. She recalls how he always blamed her for everything, even after she gave him the distance he so clearly wanted. The memory of his grim expression on their wedding day flashes in her mind. Back in the present, she spits the word at him. It's pathetic. Killian looks away, his expression filled with a quiet, somber regret. Tears welling in her eyes, she asks him, "Was it me that made that threat?" A faint, unreadable smile touches his lips as he softly replies, "Well then." She looks at him, stunned, as he asks if she wants to be separated from the Riegelhoff family. She can only think, "Oh, I see." The painful truth dawns on her. To everyone in this house, she's not Edith. She's just a member of the Riegelhoffs. She stands before him, her head bowed in quiet defeat. Her face remains shadowed and unreadable as she processes his words. But then, a sly, confident smile spreads across her face as she looks up at him. Killian looks slightly taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor. Whoosh! He turns away, his expression serious as he mentions hearing that she's been skillfully helping his mother with her work. After he's gone, she collapses to the floor, all her bravado gone. Clinging to her robe, she realizes she can't fantasize about staying here and must start planning her escape. Killian walks down the sunlit hall, a bead of sweat on his temple, clearly troubled by their conversation. He reflects that he was so distracted by the scent of roses in her room that he couldn't pay attention to what he was saying. She was right, he thinks, her words echoing in his mind. "Killian, you don't know anything about me." He admits to himself that she wasn't wrong. He's only ever seen her as the daughter of Count Riegelhoff, a pawn controlled by her manipulative father, Tisk. He grimaces, realizing that whenever he claims to know her, it's always in relation to her family. A voice calls out his name. "Killian!" Eliza appears, greeting him with a bright, "Good morning." She holds a book close to her chest, surrounded by an aura of fresh flowers. Looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes, she asks his name again. She steps closer, asking him why he's making such a troubled face. As she touches his forehead to check for a fever, he's struck by the subtle scent of violets. He contrasts it with Edith's scent, thinking this pure and innocent aroma is the true scent of Reese. He confirms she doesn't have a fever. With a faint smile, he tells Reese it's nothing. As they walk away together, he explains he's just upset because he saw a very pitiful woman, prompting her to ask if he said something to Edith again. He internally fumes, thinking that woman is just a spy from the Riegelhoff family. Back in her room, a maid with dark hair, tied in a bow, answers her call. Edith turns to her with a smile, calling her Anna and asking if she wants to go outside and have fun. She recalls that in her past life, an iced Americano was her go-to cure for depression. After getting her coffee, she would just walk aimlessly through the city to clear her head. Ready to go, she puts on a shawl and tells Anna she'll leave the preparations to her. Dressed in a beautiful gown and holding a parasol, she feels better just knowing she's going outside. Anna asks where she'd like to go, and Edith admits she has no idea. She turns to Anna, confessing she's never been out on the street by herself, and asks for recommendations. Anna looks hesitant, explaining that their destination really depends on what Edith wants to do. Anna lists the attractions on Darcy Street, from galleries and theaters to banks, and a popular bakery called Peridot. The bakery's famous strawberry tarts are so popular, she adds, that they're nearly impossible to get. Impressed by Anna's knowledge, Edith switches gears, asking if they can find a good jewelry shop to sell a few items. Anna immediately recommends 3 places: the long-established Amabella, the newer Datrius, and Rue Pecan, just off the main street. Edith has a sudden realization. Anna is the encyclopedia character, conveniently there to explain the world to the author and audience. She's basically a walking, talking wiki. Snapping out of her fourth wall-breaking moment, Edith decides they'll head to Darcy Street to sell some jewelry she removed from her dresses. Later, Edith counts a stack of bills. Satisfied that she received a good price for her jewelry, Anna silently observes, thinking that even though the diamonds were small, they were the most valuable pieces. Edith then asks if the bank is on this street, and surprised Anna confirms it is. Success. Edith throws her hands up in celebration, announcing she's finally done. She thinks about how easy it was to open an account with a fake name since this world lacks ID cards, feeling much safer with her escape funds stashed outside the mansion. She turns to Anna with a grateful smile, apologizing that their fun outing turned into a bunch of errands. Now it's time for some actual fun, as she asks Anna to recommend a good restaurant. While enjoying a meal of grilled fish, she thinks about her newly acquired emergency funds. Planning ahead for a potential nighttime escape, she asks Anna how commoners travel without private carriages. Anna explains that people usually rent a carriage or pay a fee to ride in the back of someone else's. She elaborates, describing how commoners often pile into cramped, shaky wagons, basically a carriage with a roof. Edith's inner monologue lays out her escape plan, calculating the cost of travel and lodging, right down to the risk of fleas in a stable. Sitting outdoors, she mulls over her situation, realizing she has far more questions than answers. Her maid, Anna, knows she's supposed to be a spy for the Rudwick family, but decides to let this small outing slide. For a brief moment, Edith allows herself a genuinely happy smile, savoring her cup of tea. Later, in the library, she's studying agriculture, wondering why on earth she's learning about soybeans when she's not a farmer. Suddenly, her eyes widen in surprise as she reads something shocking in the book. Her reading is interrupted by Anna, who announces the Duchess is looking for her, the jeweler has arrived. Edith is completely caught off guard by the news, her mind racing. A memory flashes, the original Edith facing off against the blonde Ryzen, and she realizes today is the day of her public humiliation. She recalls that in the original story, this event was all about the family fawning over Ryzen, completely ignoring Edith after her marriage. A close-up on Ryzen shows her innocent, wide-eyed look. In the memory, Ryzen felt bad that the ignored Edith was receiving no attention at all. Ryzen reaches for a necklace, trying to intervene. With a kind smile, she suggests a certain piece of jewelry would look lovely on Edith, but the original Edith was having none of it, cruelly mocking Ryzen's taste and calling her judgment poor. Ryzen stammers, trying to explain she wasn't trying to cause trouble, as Killian's brother Cliff looks on disapprovingly. With a villainous smirk, the original Edith demands all the other jewelry for herself, pointedly rejecting the one Ryzen offered. Back in the present, a hand points out an aquamarine piece, noting it would match Ryzen's eyes perfectly. Edith watches silently as the Duchess and others discuss which jewels suit Ryzen best. The Duchess considers a diamond necklace for Ryzen, commenting on how it seems different from the last time she saw it. Ryzen gets flustered as Cliff offers her the diamonds, protesting that he already bought her plenty, while Edith feels like an outsider. But Cliff is insistent, telling Ryzen to just pick one because they'll love whatever she chooses. Looking at the lavish display, Edith finally understands why her predecessor felt so isolated and bitter. Her eyes land on a particularly large, sparkling necklace, and she can't help but wonder what it's worth. Just as before, Ryzen panics and tries to intervene. Ryzen calls her name and Edith braces herself, thinking the original story is about to repeat itself. But this time, Ryzen picks a simple, elegant ruby necklace, saying she thinks it would suit Edith perfectly, leaving Edith stunned. The necklace is delicate, featuring a single, beautiful red gemstone. Edith is genuinely impressed, admiring the gorgeous ruby and feeling a flicker of excitement. The jeweler praises her good eye, confirming it's a top-quality piece, and the Duchess urges her to try it on. Edith glances uncertainly toward her husband, questioning him with just his name. Killian steps forward, taking the ruby necklace from its box. With a cold, unreadable expression, he gives her a simple command: turn your back. As he fastens the clasp, Edith is completely baffled by his sudden and strange behavior. Then, as she feels the cool metal on her skin, something clicks. The Duchess, Cliff, and Ryzen all watch the couple with warm, approving smiles. Radiant in her new gift, Edith turns to Killian with a confident smile, asking for his opinion. Killian looks away, a bead of sweat on his brow, clearly flustered by how beautiful she looks. After a tense moment, he turns his head and begrudgingly admits that it looks fine. The Duchess beams, celebrating Killian's first gift to his wife as he asks the jeweler for the bill. Cliff praises his brother, then immediately offers to buy all the remaining jewelry for Ryzen. You know, for balance. The Duchess immediately scolds him, asking what's left for Edith if he buys out the entire collection for Ryzen. Cliff dismisses her concern, saying he didn't want anything else anyway, while Ryzen looks overwhelmed by the pile of gifts. Edith smoothly diffuses the situation, telling the Duchess that the single necklace is more than enough for her. Inwardly, however, she sighs, imagining how much cash she could have raised for her escape fund by selling one of those gaudy necklaces. She clutches the ruby at her throat, admitting to herself that this one gift is something she could never bring herself to sell. Later, Killian muses that the original Edith only used social events to spread rumors, warning the current Edith he might stop inviting her if she keeps ignoring him. Her attention is drawn to the fireplace, where something is burning. She pulls 2 letters from the flames, wondering if they're from her villainous father, Count Riegelhoff. Holding the scorched paper, she sees the simple, ominous address to Edith. A man with a sharp goatee and brown hair holds a letter, chiding someone for getting too comfortable and telling them it's time to start doing their part, noting he heard they're handling important documents. A flurry of letters reveals his explicit orders: steal any documents related to the Duke's weaponry, or at the very least, summarize their contents and send them over. Edith, holding a letter, realizes her father somehow knows she's handling documents, deducing there must be a Riegelhoff spy inside the mansion feeding him information.
Her expression hardens with grim determination as she absorbs the weight of her father's demand. Slap. She places a fresh sheet of paper on her desk, ready to write her response.
With a quill in hand, she prepares to craft a careful reply to her father, the Count. Her chibi form explains her strategy. She'll warn him that the Duke's forces are far stronger than he imagines, and that attacking now would mean certain defeat. She continues her letter, pointing out that the Rudwick family has done nothing wrong and is acting on the Emperor's orders, questioning her father's deep-seated hatred for them. Highlighting the political reality, she writes that the Emperor is still powerful and has the support of most nobles. She urges her father to abandon his rebellion and instead proposes a brilliant, if not entirely sincere, alternative. The Riegelhoffs should seek the Rudwicks' protection to grow stronger, signing off as his humble daughter, Edith. Leaning back with a sigh of relief, she feels she said everything she needed to, admitting to herself that while it was a lie, it was a necessary one to prevent a disaster. Though she doubts her father will give up so easily, with a flick of her hand, she dismisses the worry, thinking that for now, it's not her problem. But her relief is short-lived, as the stern-faced Duke of Rudwick declares she has just thrown her father's name in honor. From what I understand, you would like me to read the text you provided. Is that correct? In a formal study guarded by knights, the Duke interrogates Edith, demanding to know if she leaked ducal family documents to outsiders. Seated on a grand armchair, she coolly denies the accusation without even looking at him. He presses her, asking if she's willing to swear on her father's honor. Looking him straight in the eye, she calmly raises the stakes, swearing not just on her honor, but on her very life. Surrounded by Killian and his men, the Duke repeats his chilling verdict. By swearing that oath, she has just dragged her family's honor through the mud. Wham! Edith jolts in her seat, utterly bewildered by his statement. The Duke summons Linen, who steps forward holding a stack of papers. The blonde-haired man presents the documents to her. As Edith takes the papers, she recognizes them as the documents she was tasked with organizing. The Duke confirms it, stating he had Linon prepare them specifically for her. The trap is sprung as Linon reveals the documents were filled with false information. Information her father used to make foolish purchases, proving he was deceived. Edith is stunned. Linon politely begins to add another point. But Edith cuts in, feigning ignorance and asking what the issue is. She maintains her composure, stating that, regardless of whether the documents were fake, she simply did the job she was assigned. A man in a blue uniform smirks, admiring her audacity, before the Duke corners her, asking how information assigned only to her ended up in her father's hands. Edith turns, immediately questioning his premise that the information was only for her. She masterfully deflects, pointing out that Linon, the author, and the entire office staff also had access to the documents. The Duke shuts her down, stating the only others in that office are his wife and Lady Ryzen, and asks if she dares to accuse his own family of being the leak. He calls her Edith Riegelhoff, and a chilling realization dawns on her. Just like in the original story, they never once accepted her as part of their family. The name Edith Rudwick was never hers to begin with, and she understands with dawning horror that this was a political trap from the start. The man in blue provocatively asks if Lady Ryz's name is Ryz Rudwick, subtly highlighting the difference in treatment. The Duke snarls at him to shut his mouth, the question clearly hitting a nerve. Edith seizes the opportunity, arguing that since everyone knew she was handling the papers, she would naturally be the prime suspect, a fact she couldn't possibly have overlooked. Holding up the evidence, she turns their logic against them, saying if they really didn't trust her, they wouldn't have given her fake documents to begin with. With a triumphant smirk, she concludes they wouldn't have given her any work at all. She then delivers the final blow, suggesting a far more sinister possibility, that they're framing her to create a justification for attacking her father. Her bold counter-accusation leaves the Duke and Killian momentarily speechless. Checkmate. Slumping back, Edith lets out a weary sigh, utterly exhausted by the endless political games. She thinks back to her father's smug face, wondering how the information truly reached him. Meanwhile, Lennon feels betrayed by the Duke's deception, but knows he, Ryze, and the Duchess are innocent, leaving only one possibility: the Regelhof spy. She recalls the original story's plot. Edith was the spy. She was caught in this very trap, found guilty, and kept as a political prisoner in the mansion. A terrifying vision of her original self strangling her appears, as she realizes that no matter what she does, she seems powerless to escape the story's predetermined tragic flow. Her head hangs low, the fight draining out of her. She looks up with hollow eyes, accepting that she's slowly sinking into the exact same doomed reality she tried so hard to avoid. A reality that ends with her death at the hands of Killian. A single tear escapes as she sits in stunned silence, defeated by a fate that seems inescapable. Overwhelmed by her seemingly sealed fate, Edith chides herself for being dumb enough to cry in front of her enemies. She faces them down, reminding them she swore on both her honor and her life. With chilling defiance, she tells them that if they're so sure of her guilt, they should just take her head, leaving Killian stunned by her declaration. The man in the blue uniform grows concerned, urging the Duke to investigate more thoroughly before making a final decision. Killian agrees, stating they'll need to keep the suspect under surveillance in the meantime. The Duke confirms his decision. Edith will be under constant surveillance, warning her to pray the truth comes out if she's truly innocent. Lennon watches as Edith sits silently, realizing that no matter what happens, the situation is unfolding just like the original story. But before anyone can react, Killian grabs her arm, telling her to follow him and dragging her from the room. Wham! As he pulls her away, the others are left in stunned silence, with Lennon managing a simple, "Oh." He pulls her into the hallway, furious, demanding to know if she's gone crazy and thinks he's joking. He asks if she even knows Duke Axel Rudwicks' battlefield nickname, the Sudden Guillotine. She scoffs, retorting that the nickname must be too big for him now. Her cavalier attitude completely baffles Killian, who can only stare and ask what's wrong with her. He demands to know why it matters to her whether the Duke takes her head or not. He softens slightly, admitting that if she's innocent, she shouldn't have to pay for a crime she didn't commit, and that the truth will surely come out. Edith looks at him with cynical disbelief, questioning if he really believes that. She declares that since neither he nor the Duke believes her, she won't trust any of them anymore, certain they'll frame her no matter what. She reminds him that they were the ones who gave her the fake documents, and then told her that her father acted on that very information, questioning why they didn't investigate more thoroughly themselves. Her words hit their mark, leaving Killian speechless as she explains she's now trapped in her room with no choice but to follow their ruling. He clenches his fist, the force of his frustration evident. With renewed resolve, Killian looks her in the eye and promises he won't let his preconceptions blind him during the investigation. Across the room, he swears on his honor to investigate fairly. She just stares back, thinking he's promising not to let his biases cloud his judgment. He vows not to let others judge her unfairly and promises to keep her updated on their progress. She internally scoffs, unable to believe he won't take sides in the case. Edith lays her final card, pointing out that with her out of the picture, the only suspects left are the Duchess and Lady Ryze, and asks how he can possibly be fair. Killian is left utterly speechless by her logic. The scene shifts to a grand ducal estate, where a stately carriage pulls up to the entrance. A man in a dark suit welcomes Ryze as she steps out of the carriage, her arrival announced. A new figure arrives, a woman with silver hair in a military uniform who excitedly calls out to "Princess!" and greets Ryze warmly. This is Princess Catherine Iberia. An introduction reveals Princess Catherine is the Emperor's only living blood relative from his youth, and is known as the most self-indulgent and thoughtless princess in history. She is also infamous as the only woman in the Empire to wear equestrian pants without being a commoner, refusing dresses and striking fear into the hearts of noblesse terror even the Emperor has given up on controlling. The man in the dark suit formally greets her as Princess, but she immediately scolds him for being so formal, insisting he use her name. The princess gets uncomfortably close to Ryze, saying she came all this way just for her, and asking if her fondness has ended, which leaves Ryze flustered. The man in the dark suit steps in, placing a protective hand on Rize's shoulder and telling the princess to stop bothering her, even though she supposedly stole his longtime crush's heart. The princess laughs it off as a joke, but the man points out it doesn't sound like one coming from her. The group makes their way up the grand staircase towards the entrance of the estate. Inside, the princess looks around, wondering why Killian didn't come, and asking if something happened. The man explains that Killian recently got married and went out with his wife Edith, prompting Rize to remember. The man smirks, clarifying that while true, it's honestly hard to even call it a real marriage. He explains it's just a political drama between their families, prompting the princess to complain about the boring political talk, but she perks up hearing that Edith is supposedly dumber than expected, seeing an opportunity. The man dismisses Edith as someone he can't even remember, adding that he's not interested in her anyway, but a subordinate interrupts to say His Majesty is waiting. The princess chides the man for being part of the imperial family while ignoring politics, noting the emperor must be displeased. He retorts that he fights with the emperor daily. Rize tries to de-escalate, suggesting he should care more about the problems in there, but she's cut off. The princess interrupts with a sharp, "Stop!" and wraps her arm around Rize, declaring she's going to hang out with her guest and that the man can talk politics with the emperor. As she leads Rize away, the princess tells the man to send her greetings to the duchess and that she'll show Rize a new horse she recently got, while he simply waves them off. The man watches them go, a small smile on his face as he remarks on the princess's unique personality. His thoughts are interrupted as someone asks how his chat with his wife went. It's Killian, who complains his head hurts and tells the man not to talk to him. The man suggests they go to the palace if he's sick, but Killian questions why. The two men face off, with Killian angrily reminding him they haven't clarified the problem yet and asking how he's supposed to go to the palace in the current situation. Killian thinks he was only trying to explain the ongoing investigation, as Lennon calls for him, and he agrees to leave shortly. He reflects that his father's reaction isn't about reputation. It's the first time he's ever seen him this way.
The scene shifts to a dark hospital room where a young girl with black hair is groaning in bed as a voice asks if she's in pain. She turns to see a bald patient from the next bed standing quietly with an IV pole, recognizing them as her neighbor.
The bald patient sits on her bed, gently asking if she can't sleep because she too is afraid of dying. She coldly denies it, shocking the other patient by declaring she wishes she could just die already. A bitter memory plays of her father calling her a brat on the phone, revealing her family resented her illness and her brother refused to be a bone marrow donor. The memory gets worse as her brother screams that the procedure would hurt and suggests they just use one from a pig, leaving her utterly alone. Back in the hospital room, the bald patient scolds her for giving up, but then admits they're jealous she even has a potential donor. They share their simple dream, to see their 20th birthday and have enough hair to finally tie it up. Their wish is just to live a normal life, to wear makeup, walk through a city, and see how other people live. Hearing these simple, heartfelt dreams leaves the black-haired girl speechless, her own despair suddenly feeling small. The patient smiles wistfully, explaining that happy memories give them strength and they hope to be strong for others one day. Gasps! The memory ends as Edith jerks awake in her lavish bed. The hospital patient was her in her past life. She sits up, the bright morning sun, a stark contrast to the grim, sterile hospital of her memories. With newfound determination, she clenches her fist, realizing that as long as she's alive, anything is possible. Gazing at a vase of roses, she feels a sense of peace, her entire mindset having shifted. As she prepares her tea, she acknowledges that remembering the pain of her past is what gives her strength now. She takes a serene sip, deciding it's time to stop fighting and finally enjoy a well-deserved rest. The peace is short-lived as maids serve breakfast, with Killian sitting across the table in stony silence. Breaking the quiet, Edith gets straight to the point, asking him what he came to discuss. Without looking up, Killian coldly retorts, asking why she interrupted his meal without any notice. He finally meets her gaze with an icy glare, and she wonders why he's being so difficult and avoiding her question. She explains it was the only time she had available, and he curtly dismisses her with an, "Oh, I see." The silence at the long table is suffocating as she internally fumes, wondering if he'll ever give her a straight answer. As he dips his bread into soup, her frustration hilariously pivots to a single thought. Is it because he's so handsome? Her train of thought derails completely as she admires his features, adding, maybe it's because he's fit and sexy? A chibi Edith cringes as she remembers an internet comment about handsome husbands, apologizing to the unknown internet woman for ever doubting her wisdom. Shaking her head clear, she decides to put the simp thoughts aside and just focus on the meal. And what a meal it is, a beautiful spread of fresh bread, cheeses, and cured meats. She takes a bite and her eyes close in bliss as she declares how delicious it is. Killian watches her genuine enjoyment from across the table, his expression completely unreadable. He finally gives her the update. They've found new evidence, and just as she predicted, Ryzen is now officially on the suspect list. He adds half-heartedly that Ryzen will be investigated thoroughly, so she shouldn't worry about potential bias. She can tell how hard that was for him to admit, but coolly states she has no reason to worry she's innocent, and the soup is fantastic. Why stress when I can enjoy this magnificent meal, she asks, leaving Killian to let out a sigh of pure exasperation. In a final power move, she lifts the lid from the soup tureen, telling him she saved him some in case he wanted more. After he leaves, Edith collapses onto a chaise lounge, suddenly bored and lonely now that her verbal sparring partner is gone. Ugh, no web novels. A fond memory from her past life surfaces, her in a comfy hoodie, happily making origami. Inspired, she snaps back to the present and asks her maid, Anna, what hobbies are popular among noble ladies. Anna lists the typical noble pastimes, embroidery, painting, and for the more active, horseback riding. Edith hilariously rejects them all. Embroidery is too cliché, her art skills are zero, and horses are terrifying. She needs another option. After a moment's thought, Anna suggests a new trend, crafting clothes for small wooden figurines. Anna explains it's great for improving sewing skills, showing an illustration of dolls that look suspiciously like Edith and Killian. The idea resonates deeply, reminding her of the dolls she could never afford as a child. Where can I get one? She asks immediately. Anna checks her purse, calculating that a pair of high-quality figurines will cost 50,000 zenas, a bit more than Edith expected. Edith hands over the money, telling Anna to buy high-quality supplies and keep the extra as a tip for her hard work. Anna is stunned by the kindness, suspiciously asking why and if Edith is trying to insult her. Edith just laughs, reassuring her that she meant no offense and simply appreciates Anna's help. She reflects that Anna and Linon have been the only two people in the entire mansion who have consistently treated her with basic decency. Edith smoothly explains that the extra cash is a token of her appreciation, telling Anna it would make her happy if she accepted it. Anna stares at the generous tip, completely speechless, as Edith encourages her to just take it. After a moment of hesitation, Anna gratefully accepts the gift, thanking her lady. Edith looks a bit down, thinking to herself that she'd hoped for a better start, but something feels off. She tries her hand at sewing a tiny garment, but her stitches are a complete disaster. Staring at her clumsy work, she wonders if she should just quit, admitting it's way harder than she thought, even with the flawless materials Anna bought. Just then, Anna returns, and Edith happily greets her, only to be baffled by the mountain of supplies she's carrying. Anna explains that she bought a pair of wooden dolls, one male and one female, and the rest are all the necessary supplies for the hobby. She even had a seamstress draw up some clothing patterns and offers to get more, but a flustered Edith insists this is more than enough. As she holds a piece of fabric, Edith reflects that Anna seems to have warmed up to her, despite her still blunt expression. With renewed spirits, she decides to embrace her new hobby, declaring that the whole point of life is to enjoy it. Skill level be damned. She looks at the two blank dolls, acknowledging that since she's so bad at this, indulging in such a pastime is a true luxury. A little practice goes a long way, and she skillfully fits a beautiful, intricate dress onto the female doll. Holding up the finished product, she's proud of how good it looks on the outside, deciding who cares if the inside is a total mess. With both dolls now fully dressed, she playfully makes them lean in for a kiss. After posing the dolls in a romantic embrace, she ponders her next move, thinking maybe she should take up embroidery. Crash! Her peaceful crafting session is violently interrupted by someone shouting her name. Startled, Edith nearly drops her creation as Killian bursts in, his face a mask of fury, announcing that her handwritten letter has been found. The scene shifts to a sunny patio, where a blonde woman sips tea, laughing at some surprising news she's just heard. This is Layla, who asks her companion if it's true that Edith has been on a probationary period since her marriage. The blonde man smirks, confirming that's no longer the case now that the Duke's documents have been filtered, a development he believes will seal Edith's fate. He explains that Count Regelhoff always treated Edith as a disposable pawn, likely ordering her to spy on the Duke's family from the start. He then asks Layla if she honestly believes the Count would have trusted Edith with anything truly important, prompting her to think. Layla realizes they were just caught in a trap set by the Duke, a fact her companion confirms with the image of a letter caught in a steel jaw. He admits, however, that one thing bothers him. Reports suggest Killian is taking care of Edith in a, quote, strange way. Seeing an opportunity, Layla suggests they tell the Duke that Edith is merely a throwaway spy sent by the Count. Her companion smiles, noting that Killian's marriage has conveniently increased Layla's own chances of marrying Cliff. At the mention of Edith becoming Duchess, Layla snaps, slamming the table in a rage and declaring Edith's very existence a sin. Her fury builds as she pictures Ryzen and Killian together, unable to accept the idea of Edith taking that place. The blonde man calmly reminds her that Ryzen was always the problem. If Ryzen controls Cliff, their arrangement becomes impossible, leaving Layla looking crushed. Composing herself, Layla's mind shifts to strategy, and she thoughtfully asks how they might use Edith to their advantage. Layla smirks, certain that Edith must hate Ryzen too, and suggests that all they need to do is fan the flames and let Edith take care of Ryzen for them. Reflected in her teacup, she concludes that this plan will be like killing two birds with one stone. A loud crash echoes as the scene snaps back to Edith's room, her name being shouted once more. She jumps in surprise, startled by the sudden and loud intrusion. Annoyed, Edith turns to the door, calling out Killian's name and reminding him that knocking is basic manners. But Killian is far beyond pleasantries, standing in the doorway looking absolutely furious. He storms in, warning her that his father will be summoning her shortly and demanding to know her explanation, but she calmly states she'll just say she was framed. "Are you out of your mind?" he explodes, questioning if she thinks the powerful Duke of Rudwicks is someone to be taken as a joke. Edith looks away, internally recalling that in the original story, the Duke knew she was innocent, but proceeded with the accusation anyway. As Killian runs a hand through his hair in frustration, Edith's thoughts completely derail. Seriously, how can he be this handsome even when he's mad? A knock at the door cuts their tense conversation short. It's Linen, who has come to inform them that the Duke has summoned Edith to meet with him. Seeing Linen's grim expression, Edith can't help but wonder if he also believes she's the culprit. Standing tall, she walks past Killian with an air of confidence, asking him if finding new evidence isn't supposed to be a good thing. Killian watches her go before turning to his aide, simply saying, "Let's go, Linen." In the Duke's study, he presents Edith with a transaction list from her father, noting it's in her handwriting, which she reluctantly admits looks like hers. With both his sons standing behind him, the Duke offers Edith a deal. Tell the truth and abandon her father, and she won't be punished. With a sharp intake of breath, Edith rises from her chair, declaring that this isn't about punishment. She slams her hand on his desk, her voice ringing with conviction, as she reminds him, "Didn't I tell you that I swore on my honor for my word?" She presents her own documents, pointing out the forged one has thicker grid lines, the work of a clumsy amateur. The Duke remains skeptical, suggesting she could have faked the differences herself. Edith smirks, logically pointing out that if she wanted to get caught, she wouldn't have used her own handwriting in the first place. She goes for the kill, noting the handwriting is also slightly off, and offers to bring her personal diary to prove it. The aide with glasses agrees, and a tiny Edith confidently tells him to get it from Anna. As she waits, she studies the document, realizing the forger, though clumsy, knew a thing or two about finance. Her mind races as she realizes only the Duchess and Ryzen knew her methods, and it feels like someone is forcing the original story's plot to happen. The Duke and his sons watch her intently, the Duke stroking his beard in thought. She returns with her diary open, showing them the clear, albeit slight, differences in their handwriting. Pointing to a specific letter, she explains the forgery is written in cursive, a style she never uses. Checkmate. She declares the document a forgery and tells the Duke to find the real rat, earning a thoughtful hum as she celebrates internally. Just then, the door opens, and Ryzen enters, announcing her arrival. Killian questions her presence, but the Duke coldly states that he was the one who summoned her. The Duke reminds Ryzen that she's been helping his wife for years, and was recently taught Edith's table grid method. Ryzen confirms it, calling the method very effective, and noting how much the Duchess loved it. When asked who else knew the method, Ryzen says only the Duchess would know if she taught other assistants. Edith chimes in, clarifying that besides her, only Cliff and Killian had a vague idea of the method. The Duke narrows it down, concluding that only Edith and the immediate family could have written that document. A nervous Reese hesitantly agrees that it's probably true. Completely lost, Reese asks Edith why they're questioning her about this. Edith is baffled, thinking that Reese clearly doesn't understand the situation, even though she's sure she explained everything before. Having heard enough, the Duke dismisses Reese, telling her she can leave now that things have been settled. With a click, Reese quietly exits, leaving a tense silence behind her. Edith realizes this has put them in an awkward spot and calls the Duke's conclusion disappointing. The Duke glares back, reminding her that she was the one who presented this as conclusive proof. She gestures to the evidence, firmly stating that the grid and handwriting are different and that he has witnessed all the proof she's provided. She stands her ground, challenging him with her gaze. A painful memory surfaces. In the original story, Reese was the one who exposed Edith. She'd hoped Reese's testimony would save her this time. Back in the present, Edith is left completely stunned and confused by the outcome. Her shock turns to fury as she spots Killian casually reading her diary and screams his name. She runs over to him, absolutely livid that he'd invade her privacy like that. Whack! She snatches her diary back, accusing him of having zero respect for her. The Duke cuts in, admitting she has a point but stating there's no other evidence to confirm her claims. With a tired look, the Duke declares he'll let the issue slide for now. As Killian walks away, he tells Edith he can't trust her, and she retorts that she already knows he's never trusted her. He stops, questioning if it's not perfectly natural for them to suspect a member of the rival Riegelhoff family. Edith finally snaps, shouting that she doesn't care about their family drama, but it clearly doesn't matter to them. She turns her back on him, hurt and frustrated by their endless suspicion. Suddenly, she's hit with a barrage of the original Edith's memories, seductions, betrayals, all done in the name of her family. The vivid flashbacks continue, showing her ruining parties and sabotaging marriages to dishonor the Rudwicks. She wonders why these awful memories are flooding back now, as she and Killian face each other in a tense standoff. Feeling completely overwhelmed, Edith turns to leave. She steels herself, realizing she can't let her guard down, especially around Reese. Just then, Reese's voice calls out for Killian. Reese approaches Killian with a worried expression, asking if there was a problem. Killian simply stares ahead, remaining silent for a long moment. He finally tells Reese that Edith was suspected of stealing documents, and Reese immediately gasps, insisting Edith would never do that. Edith watches from the doorway as Reese asks for evidence, but Killian vaguely says he only wishes he could believe that. As Reese tries to defend her, Edith accepts that Killian will never be on her side, and that eavesdropping is pointless. Killian cuts the conversation short, telling Reese they're letting it go and pulling her away before she can argue further. An old diary entry from the original Edith reveals her obsession with Killian, followed by a shot of him storming down the hall in the present. Edith writes in her diary, admitting that Killian is definitely more her type than his brother Cliff. Tisk. Killian scoffs privately, wondering why that woman would ever want to smile from him. He continues his reading in the library, his expression as cold and unreadable as ever. Suddenly a faint smirk appears as he lets out a quiet, "Oh my!" His brother Cliff interrupts, telling Killian he looks unwell before ordering him to the training grounds. Meanwhile, Edith wanders through a sunlit hall dressed in an elegant floral gown. She's greeted by the Duchess, who says she's been waiting and heard about yesterday's difficult events. Edith looks away, reflecting that the pain of the mind can be far crueler than any physical hardship. On the verge of tears, she desperately pleads with the Duchess, swearing she didn't steal any documents. She braces for disbelief, telling the Duchess she understands if she can't be trusted. But to her shock, the Duchess reaches out and gently takes her hands. The Duchess looks her in the eye and makes a stunning declaration. "I believe you, Edith." She's been watching all along, seeing how hard Edith has been trying to adapt to her new life. A reflection of her younger self reminds her that she's been through a similar ordeal in the past. With a confident smile, she vows that while the culprit is unknown, she won't let this injustice stand. Sob, completely overwhelmed by this unexpected act of faith, Edith breaks down crying. As she tearfully mentions her old family, the Riegelhoffs, a sudden, shocking realization hits her. Her consciousness fades to black, a single, confused thought echoing in the void. Huh? Elsewhere, a frantic guard sprints along the castle walls, shouting for Killian and Cliff. He finds the two brothers locked in a heated, shirtless, sword-fighting practice. The guard delivers the news. Edith collapsed while talking with the Duchess, leaving Killian stunned. Thump. He doesn't waste a second, immediately turning and sprinting towards the main building. Later, a doctor explains Edith fainted, because her body finally relaxed after a period of high stress. Killian listens to the diagnosis, his handsome face a mask of grim contemplation. He realizes it was his father's harsh interrogation that pushed her to the brink. The arrogant Edith Rigglehoff, once the terror of high society, had cried so much that she actually collapsed. Killian sits silently by her bedside, watching her sleep, the room heavy with unspoken thoughts. A maid quietly escorts the doctor out, leaving the family to their privacy. Killian turns to his mother, asking what she and Edith were talking about before she fainted. The Duchess explains that Edith insisted she was innocent, even though she was sure no one would believe her. Her gaze drifts from her conflicted son to the vulnerable woman sleeping in the bed. She reveals Edith only broke down because she was so grateful that someone, finally, trusted her. Edith's words, "I know you can't trust me," echo in Killian's mind, creating a storm of conflict. A fragmented thought tries to form in his mind. I to Edith. Ugh. A sharp pain suddenly pierces his head, causing him to cry out as his mother rushes to his side. Though the Duchess calls for the doctor, he pushes through the pain, insisting he's fine. At that moment, Ryzen appears in the doorway, calling his name with obvious concern. Her wide, innocent eyes are filled with worry for him. She reaches out a tentative hand, wanting to offer comfort, but Killian intercepts her touch, gently taking her hand in his. He avoids her gaze, reassuring Ryzen that he's fine as the Duchess watches on. Apologizing, he dismisses himself to go rest, leaving Ryzen looking worried and confused. The scene shifts to Edith's unconscious mind, her red hair floating in a dark, starry abyss. There, she finds herself not as Edith, but as her former self, Suna Choi. Wondering if she's died again, she's suddenly faced with a glowing system window mentioning 3 secret rules. Her head whips around, completely baffled by the cryptic message. Huh? Her eyes widen as she reads the words, questioning the 3 main rules to maintain the order. An unknown voice cuts through the darkness, demanding to know what she's talking about. Gasp! She's ripped through the void, desperately screaming for the rest of the rules as she's pulled away. With a sharp gasp, her eyes fly open. She's awake, back in Edith's body. A maid with dark hair tied in a bun rushes in, calling for her lady and asking if she's finally awake. The red-haired Edith slowly comes to, completely disoriented, as her maid reveals she's been unconscious for 2 whole days. Panic sets in as Edith realizes she passed out right when she was about to say something crucial to the Duchess. Phew! As she tries to tell her maid, Anna, the truth about the Rigglehoff family, a sharp pain cuts her off and she collapses back in bed. Wincing in pain, Edith apologizes and quietly asks for a glass of water. She starts to ask about Killian but catches herself, masking her concern with a faint smile and dismissing the thought. Edith reflects on her strange new life, recalling how she woke up in the body of a novel's Villainess and thought simply being nice would save her from a tragic end. She'd even dreamed of befriending the main characters, maybe even finding her own happily ever after with a handsome lead. Despite her plans for a quiet life, she found herself trapped. No matter how she tried to change things, the original story's plot would always force itself back on track. She realizes a mysterious power is at play, as the system window declares she is, quote, subjected to the main story, because she and the original Edith are not the main characters. A harsh truth settles over an image of a glowing book. They were never meant to be the heroes of this tale. Edith's role is a simple one. The Villainess, a disposable side character destined to be tragically executed by her own husband. Curled up in bed, she accepts that this grim destiny is fast approaching and tries to recall what happens next in the story. A jolt of realization hits her. With a new, sharp determination in her eyes, she remembers exactly what she's supposed to do. The narration explains that Edith, pushed to her limit by the trauma of the document incident, decides to make a bold move.
Following the script of the novel, she sneaks into Killian's bedroom, planning to kiss him while he sleeps.
She stands at his doorway, steeling her nerves before stepping into the lion's den. A wave of self-loathing washes over her as she thinks about how disgusting he must find her, the woman he was forced to marry. Watching him sleep, she admits that even when he pretends to be nice, she can't stop her own feelings from growing. She thinks he looks like a sleeping angel, the perfect male lead, and finally admits to herself that this is the man she fell for. Resigning herself to her fate, she whispers for him to despise her after this, just as the story demands. Leaning over him, she covers his eyes with her hand, hoping this act will finally allow her to accept her tragic destiny. She closes in for the kiss that's meant to seal her doom. Just as she's about to make contact, she thinks that now Killian should wake up and see her. But before her lips can touch his, a hand shoots out and grabs her wrist, stopping her cold. His grip is firm as he tells her she did a good job hiding this side of herself. Killian's eyes are wide open, a predatory smirk on his face as he says her facade is crumbling and asks if she's in a rut. Oh, he did not just say that. Flustered, Edith tries to explain, but he cuts her off with a simple, well, let's do it.
Chuck. He yanks her forward, pulling her onto the bed with him.
Lying on the bed, Edith looks up as a smirking Killian looms over her, mockingly wondering if the snake-like woman can satisfy him in bed. She panics, telling him to wait, but he silences her by capturing her hand. Is it really all right to do this with me, she asks, her voice trembling. But he just stares back, his expression unreadable. His mind, however, is clear. She isn't Ryze, and compared to his feelings for the blonde, this woman should mean nothing to him. Edith reminds herself their marriage was purely political, and she never expected anything more from him anyway. Leaning in close, he tells her she has no right to ask questions after sneaking into his room, and then he kisses her. He presses her down against the bed, deepening the kiss as the scene gets heated. Ripping his shirt open, he tells her he knows she's been contemplating his body and offers her the chance to feel his warmth. Mortified, Edith remembers he read her diary and tries to stammer out a denial, but he just looks at her knowingly. His hand gently explores her body, tracing lines over her nightgown. As he moves over her, she blushes intensely while he murmurs his consent. He whispers in her ear that she can actually look cute, calling her by her full name, Edith Reigelhoff, and making her gasp. Her protest is cut short as he takes hold of her foot, escalating the intimacy. The next morning, sunlight streams in as Edith wakes up in bed, a shy, happy smile on her face as she thinks, we did it. Killian, already up and in a robe, dismisses a servant, telling him he wants to be left alone for the day. He turns his attention to Edith, who is now sitting up, and softly asks how she's feeling. Kia, without warning, he sweeps her up into his arms, ignoring her startled cry that she can walk on her own. No, he says simply, carrying her across the room. Later, while she's soaking in a bath, Killian reminds her that this is just like her first night when she fell asleep in the tub. He smiles, teasing her that she must really like bathtubs. Edith laughs nervously, completely baffled by his sudden change in behavior, and wondering what on earth has gotten into him. Ryze reflects on her kiss with Killian, believing it was an act of hatred he'll regret. She laments that his first kiss, meant for her, was stolen by Edith in a moment of temptation. Meanwhile, Edith ponders this new reality, recalling that, in the original story, her seduction of Killian completely failed. Blushing, she wonders if he slept with her out of pity. Or perhaps, she theorizes, it's because Ryze is now leaning towards Cliff, so Killian abandoned his hopes for her. She remembers his sweet voice, and the embrace she never thought she'd receive from the cold man she married. Gah! Overwhelmed by the memory, she clutches her head with a flustered blush. She quickly apologizes to her confused maid, Anna, brushing it off as nothing. Taking a seat, Edith tries to calm down, recalling that after their night together, she had one of those dreams again. The scene shifts to a dark-haired woman facing a system window that announces an exception to the first rule has been met. She wonders if this means the author's authority is now reduced, and if it's related to when she last fainted. She asks the system what the conditions for the exemption were, but the screen is blank. Beep! The sound startles her as she looks up, questioning the sudden alert. Looking into the darkness, she grows uneasy, wondering what the system's silence means. Her anxiety mounts as she continues to ponder the vague, unanswered question. A close-up reveals her wide, worried eyes as the uncertainty sinks in. She reflects that the system knows she's rewriting the novel and that anyone can be the protagonist. Bound by chains to the original Edith, she reaffirms her goal to change as little as possible. Back in her room, Edith contemplates the specific conditions of her task, recalling a vision of herself in a dark hood. She muses that there are multiple conditions, and she's just completed one of them. A magical book shatters as she thinks about reducing the author's authority, and how certain people possess the power to do so. Staring at a shadowy, godlike figure, she questions if the author is the god of this world, or if her purpose is simply to follow the original script. Deciding her information is insufficient, she wonders how the author's power can be diminished if the novel is already complete. A brilliant light forms between two hands as she questions just how much the author's authority has been reduced. She analyzes the changes, wondering if the events, characters, or the story itself have been most affected, and what the potential damage could be. After much thought, she feels she's finally arrived at an important conclusion. She realizes her fate might be different now, seeing a vision of her lying alone as Killian embraces Ryze. It's too early to give up. Sunlight streams through a window as she decides to confirm how Killian will appear in the next chapter. In an office, the Duchess jumps in surprise as she hears Edith's voice announce her presence. Edith enters, and the Duchess greets her with relief, asking if she's feeling better. Smiling, Edith asks if she worried her, while thinking to herself that she's been fine for a while. The Duchess updates her on a recent palace visit, suggesting it was about Duke Langstono's movements. She adds that the Duke has been very worried about Edith. She relays the Duke's apology, explaining he was harsh due to battlefield stress. The Duchess then gently asks what Edith wants to do next, promising not to force her to help. With new resolve, Edith says, "I'll do this," knowing all eyes are on her and that she's lost everyone's trust. She feels she can't move forward with ease while suspicions linger, shadowed by gossiping figures. She tells the Duchess she wants to continue helping, fearing that if she doesn't, the real culprit will conspire against her again. The Duchess looks concerned, admitting she's had the same thought. Edith's mind races, realizing the person who framed her knows about the document incident, but isn't from the Rudwicks family. She thinks of Renan, the long-haired man with glasses, as one of the few who doesn't judge her, and believes she's hidden his suspicions for now. Smiling brightly, she tells the Duchess she'd be happy to meet with Renan. Standing before his office door, she suddenly feels a wave of anxiety, wondering why she's so worried about his reaction. Renan looks up from his desk and gives a simple, stoic, "Hello." Noting his emotionless expression, Edith puts on a brave face and offers her help, privately questioning if this is a good idea. She cheerfully asks him what she should do first. Renan hands her a large box, instructing her to start by categorizing the receipts inside by year. Edith takes the messy box, questioning why the documents are in such disarray. A quick flashback shows the chaotic previous employee is to blame. Guess he wasn't a fan of filing. The office falls into a long, awkward silence. Renan remains quiet, offering no further explanation. Holding the box, Edith waits patiently for him to speak. He turns away, facing his bookshelf, leaving her standing there. Edith looks on, an unspoken question hanging in the air. In a vast sunlit library, Edith and Renan work in a comfortable silence at their separate desks. Edith finds the peaceful atmosphere of the office to be a welcome change of pace. The only sound that breaks the silence is the soft scratching of Renan's pen against paper. She soaks in the warm sunlight, feeling it's the very picture of peace itself. Her quiet focus is suddenly broken as she looks up from her documents. Renan announces that her workday is over, catching a surprised Edith off guard as she rushes to mark her progress. He takes the box of documents from her, offering a simple thank you for her efforts. As she watches him, she quietly thinks of the man named Renan. She compares his prideful, blunt nature to her awful boss from her past life, noting they can't seem to speak gently. A flashback reveals her former boss was highly skilled but socially awkward, like a child who couldn't fit in. Smiling to herself, she figures Renan probably prefers this quiet, straightforward way of doing things. With a cheerful wave, she tells him she'll see him tomorrow. Returning to her room, she finds her maid, Anna, and asks if she had to wait long. Back in the now empty office, Renan stands alone, staring thoughtfully out the window. He bows his head in quiet contemplation as the last rays of sunlight filter into the room. Elsewhere, a dark-haired man holding a glass of wine wonders if he's been summoned, hoping he's not interrupting. The scene shifts to a formal dinner, where Ryze sits quietly at a table with two men. At the dinner, Renan is pointedly asked for his opinion. An unseen person demands to know why they were invited to this meeting. The dark-haired man smirks slyly, clearly about to stir the pot. It's a dinner with Killian, his brother Cliff, and Ryze, where Cliff directly accuses Renan of spying on Edith. Renan's face is a mask of stoicism as he listens to the accusation. Killian looks irritated as Ryze recalls that it was Edith who volunteered to help the Duchess in the first place. Ryze continues to wonder why Killian chose to accept Edith's help. As she puzzles over his motives, Killian remains silent and lost in thought at the table. His sharp gaze sweeps over the room, taking everything in. Renan appears slightly taken aback by the turn in conversation. A heavy, tense silence hangs over the dinner table. The conversation conjures an image of Edith working with intense, meticulous focus. Renan recalls how diligently she worked, a silent compliment to her thoroughness. He looks up, a flicker of what might be admiration in his eyes. Seeing Killian's tense expression, Reese assumes he's only putting up with Edith because she likes him. Cliff offers a simple, knowing okay in response. Dismissing Renan for now, Cliff internally vows to keep that woman under strict surveillance. The scene transitions to a grand, sunlit palace interior. Killian walks alone down a long, red-carpeted hall, his mind clearly troubled. With a bead of sweat on his temple, his expression is one of deep concern. Reese marvels that Edith managed to earn a compliment from the stoic Renan in a single day, something she's never seen happen before. Killian lets out a sharp, defensive, "Of course!" The gossip continues, as someone suggests that since Renan is single, he and Edith might end up together. Cliff provocatively asks Reese if she doesn't think that would be a terrible outcome. He continues with a malicious grin, saying it would be a huge loss to their family to lose someone like Renan. Cliff turns the pressure on his brother, asking Killian directly if he really doesn't care about Edith. Killian forces a laugh, denying it, but Reese's inner thought reveals she suspected he was lying. The words echo in Killian's mind, questioning if Edith has affected him in a way even Reese couldn't, a thought he desperately rejects. Unable to take any more, Killian abruptly gets up and leaves the table. He stops in his tracks, a startling possibility beginning to dawn on him. A knight in a blue cape appears, but Killian waves him off, saying he'll be there soon. His mind flashes between Edith and Reese, finally lingering on a memory of Edith in her nightgown. He acknowledges to himself that she's a sensual woman, and being alone with her for hours in a locked room is dangerous. With a tense grip, the dark-haired man reaches for the ornate door handle, hesitating to enter. Click. The door swings open as he peeks inside, wondering if it's unlocked. He steps through the grand doorway, entering a lavishly decorated room. His gaze sweeps across the sunlit, opulent chamber, but his eyes widen in shock at the scene before him. Another man is kissing a red-haired woman. His mind reels in disbelief as he stares at the intimate embrace. Suddenly, the man grabs the woman, who screams in surprise, then turns on the intruder, demanding to know what he's doing there. She angrily asks why he's barging into someone else's room, leaving him speechless. The scene shifts to a quiet corner of the luxurious room, the tension hanging in the air. Now, he sits across from a different red-haired woman, Edith, in a much calmer, yet still awkward atmosphere. She breaks the silence, cautiously asking how he's been. He looks down, quietly observing that she seems to be doing well. Deciding to change the subject, Edith smiles and thanks him, mentioning she's started helping her mother's aid. She realizes he must already know, picturing Renan and his father discussing matters. Killian abruptly shifts topics, stating that the Filch family are merely vassals to the Duke. He explains that since his father gave him the responsibility, Baron Linal now manages things in the capital. A flashback shows a young Linal reading peacefully under a tree as Killian recalls they grew up together. The memory continues with two young boys clashing wooden swords in a friendly duel. Thwack. The sword flies from a young Killian's hand as he's knocked to the ground. The other boy stands over him, the victor of their practice match. While the winner stretches nonchalantly, the defeated boy sulks nearby. The flashback returns to the studious young Linal, lost in his book. A young Killian approaches him, asking if he ever gets bored of just reading and studying. Linal looks up from his book, his expression thoughtful. Back in the present, Killian sits composed, having finished his unexpected story. Edith looks slightly taken aback by his sudden trip down memory lane. She realizes the characters and their histories in this world are far more complex than the original story ever let on. She's baffled why he chose now to tell her all this, especially since they haven't spoken since that night. Killian sits stiffly, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He suddenly announces his plan to visit the Ryzen estate, catching her by surprise. A sweeping view reveals the grand and imposing Ryzen estate nestled among the mountains. He watches her intently, gauging her reaction to his news. Edith flinches, clearly startled by the sudden announcement. Killian stands up decisively, placing his hands on his hips. He laughs it off, saying she must be joking and thanks her for the invitation anyway. Playing along, Edith covers a laugh and wishes him a safe trip. As he walks away, he chides himself for being a fool for even bringing it up. A voice calls out, informing him the Duke is waiting, and he agrees to go right away. Back in the study, Edith firmly places a massive, completed stack of documents on the desk. With a satisfied stretch, she leans back in her chair, surrounded by neatly organized paperwork. She glances over her shoulder, her attention caught by something. It's Linon, and she asks him why he's staring at her like that. Pushing up his glasses, Linon quickly dismisses her, saying it's nothing. He returns to his desk, trying to resume his work but clearly distracted. He rests his hand on the desk, his mind elsewhere. Standing over the neatly stacked papers, he can't seem to look away. A bead of sweat forms on his temple as he takes in the sheer volume of her work. He picks up a perfectly organized spreadsheet, completely stunned at how fast she completed the task. A smiling woman with dark hair announces an embroidery reunion and invites them to attend. Edith and a blonde woman look up, both surprised by the sudden invitation. An older woman explains that in romance novels, embroidery is considered one of the biggest virtues a woman can have. These embroidery events, she notes, are the perfect opportunity for noble women to show off their amazing skills. Whenever a noble woman hosts a bazaar, it's common to hold an embroidery reunion for all ages to participate. Given Duchess Rudwicks' high standing, it's only natural for her to host such events more frequently than others. A blonde woman, Ryzen, expresses her doubts, worried she can't create pieces with the same quality as the Duchess. The Duchess chats with Ryzen, with a red-haired woman, Edith, standing nearby. Edith panics internally, convinced she won't be able to make anything even close to acceptable. Holding her embroidery hoop, Edith asks her maid, Anna, if this is always so difficult, deciding she has to refuse the invitation. With a bright, apologetic smile, Edith waves her hands, ready to politely decline, but the Duchess grabs Ryzen's hand, pulling her closer as Edith looks on. Caught off guard, the Duchess smiles warmly at Ryzen, agreeing that her participation would take a lot of pressure off both her and Edith. Convinced it's impossible to outshine the story's main characters anyway, Edith reluctantly agrees to attend. The Duchess and another woman look on approvingly, noting that someone was worried about her skills, but clearly, she had nothing to fear. Ryzen humbly presents a beautiful shawl she just finished, saying she plans to embroider a garden of flowers on it. The other ladies flock around her, fawning over the shawl and asking if she truly made it herself. Watching the scene unfold, Edith wonders if Ryzen showcased her skills like this in the original story. Ryzen modestly claims she was just going to make a handkerchief, saying it's the only thing her lack of skill would allow. Deciding on a plan, Edith sits down with a book and chooses her thread colors. Ryzen approaches her, kindly offering a spool of pink thread and asking for her opinion. Edith accepts, thinking it will look lovely, but privately suspects Ryzen is only talking to her out of pity. Just then, the Duchess joins them, remarking that the design is similar to one her nephew made and will look gorgeous when done. The Duchess reminisces with another lady about the handkerchief, learning that Lady Lisa, now 16 and pregnant, made it when she was 14. Edith realizes they're subtly calling her design childish and scoffs internally at their pettiness. Ryzen glances over, her expression unreadable. As she looks at the thread, she thinks to herself that she's planning to give her creation to Killian. Another woman chimes in, saying Killian looks best in colors that match his eyes, and Edith listens with a smile. The older women chuckle together, remarking on how sweet the honeymoon phase is. The scene shifts to a serious-looking Killian, cloaked and walking through a sunlit forest. He and an older, bearded man look out over a magnificent castle as the man asks for his opinion on the remote territory. The man points out that very few territories have as much potential for development as this one. He adds that the journey from the capital is surprisingly short, taking less than a week on horseback. Killian admits it's much better than he expected, revealing he was worried it wouldn't be much to look at. Surveying the grand but sparsely decorated interior, he notes the castle is in great condition, but he'll need to buy new furniture. He thinks of Edith, doubting that a woman from the money-hungry Riegelhoff family would be happy with an old castle. He worries that she's too accustomed to the luxuries of the capital to appreciate a place like this. Changing the subject, Killian asks how cold the winters get. His companion explains that snow is a bigger problem than the temperature, but assures him there has never been an avalanche. Relieved, Killian says he's glad to hear that. He stands quietly for a moment, taking in the view from a shaded spot. It's pretty good, he concludes, suggesting they develop industries to take advantage of the young population. He imagines establishing a trade route through the mountains, making it a key path for merchants heading to the capital. His companion listens to his ambitious plans with a focused gaze. He then challenges Killian, asking if he's truly satisfied with just this. Killian hesitates, caught off guard by the pointed question. The older man's question hangs in the air as they stand side by side. With a defiant glare, Killian asks what would happen if he wasn't, questioning if the man wants him to demand more territories or a higher rank. The man makes a shocking suggestion. Maybe you could just give me your current position, then reminds Killian he could have made him the Duke's successor before. Stunned, Killian flashes back to a painful memory as the man presses him, asking why he's bringing this up now. A younger Killian claps his hands smugly, remembering how he always did what was asked of him and wondering what this is all about. In a burst of rage, he recalls screaming at the Duke, "What do you mean you want me to marry?" feeling that the only two things he ever wanted were stolen from him. Killian decides to push aside his useless thoughts, a small smile appearing as he declares himself satisfied with this path. The older, bearded man sees his expression and tells him not to worry, but Killian assures him he'll take over management as soon as the title is transferred, if the man is truly planning a merchant route. As the scene pans over the forest, the Duke warns that an influx of outsiders will inevitably lead to more crime, to which Killian simply agrees. The scene shifts to a lively town square, where a woman announces the bazaar items have arrived for sale. Edith and the blonde woman Ryzen take in the bustling event, noting the wide variety of items and the delicious smell of sweets. Ryzen suddenly grabs Edith's arm, excitedly pointing toward the embroidery section. Edith internally panics, realizing her maid lied about her embroidery looking good, only to discover someone has already put a ribbon on it to buy it. She explains to a surprised Ryzen that this means the bazaar is going to be incredibly competitive, but Ryzen seems hesitant to agree. Elsewhere, a dark-haired man stands thoughtfully, observing the festivities. Edith suggests to Ryzen that they go look at other things, and Ryzen readily agrees. Edith tells herself this is all a clever plan to help Cliff secure Ryzen's masterpiece, and definitely not because she's embarrassed by her own humble work. As they walk away, the dark-haired man watches them, offering to buy them some pie. While walking, Edith muses about how little she understands high society, just as they overhear two women gossiping about how a lowly woman is present. One of the gossiping women whispers to her companion, telling her to watch her words. Edith overhears them note that even though she isn't a blood relative, the Duke and Duchess care for her, a situation that feels all too familiar to her past life. A flashback shows her past self being targeted by office gossip, realizing that some people just want to make you feel ashamed. The women continue their whispers, calling her the family's pet and mocking the Duke's benevolence, prompting a worried Ryzen to clutch Edith's stress. Ryzen tries to comfort Edith, dismissing the women as troublemakers who don't understand anything. Edith calmly calls them out, pointing out their ignorance in not even recognizing Countess Bryn, and suggesting they should be the ones ashamed. She continues her verbal takedown, reminding the Countess of her married name, and telling them both to learn some manners, leaving them fuming. With a confident smirk, Edith warns Countess Bryn that she'll see how big a mistake she's made once the Duke's son Cliff hears about this. The Countess snaps back that she feels sorry for Mr. Killian, but Ryzen just thinks Edith is overreacting. After the women leave, Ryzen apologizes, explaining that the woman is a friend of Countess Sinclair. She feels guilty, believing the woman only insulted Edith because of her. Edith reassures her not to worry about it, patting her head and realizing this confrontation places her at the 4th volume of the original story. Just then, two ladies approach Ryzen, showering her with praise for her beauty and the embroidery piece that was just sold. While Ryzen is swarmed with admirers, Edith sits down, already feeling bored with the whole affair. The ladies continue to flatter Ryzen, insisting the Duchess adopted her because of her incredible qualities. Edith watches on, feeling ignored as the only daughter-in-law, but deciding she doesn't really care. Suddenly, Ryzen's face lights up as she happily greets Killian, who has just returned. Edith freezes in her seat, realizing she needs to act like a proper wife, or he might get angry with her for not even trying. She approaches him, almost saying she missed him, before catching herself and awkwardly asking if he had a safe trip. Killian gives her a long, silent look from the side. Edith asks why he's staring, and he just smiles, confirming his safe return and asking how she's been. She replies that she's just been bored, and when he teases that it must be because he was gone, she internally scoffs at his arrogance. Sitting together, she explains she was busy with embroidery, and he dryly remarks, "I can see why." Feeling awkward, Edith uses the excuse of drinking too much iced tea to escape to the restroom. She walks alone down an opulent, sunlit hallway. Suddenly, a shadowy figure grabs her wrist, pulling her to a stop with a sharp tug. A man with furious eyes looms over her as she demands to know who dares to grab her. A blonde man reveals himself to be Shane Reigelhoff, her brother, leaving her stunned that her family is at the event. He angrily demands to know why she abandoned their plan, and asks if she sent the list of armor he requested. Shane tightens his grip, revealing the document she sent was a fake, and accusing her of sending it on purpose, knowing she was being watched. He assumes she was trying to avoid suspicion, but she firmly denies it, insisting her letter was sincere and demanding to know where he got the fake weapons document. With cold resolve, Edith looks him in the eye and states, "I didn't send that." Back at the table, Killian waits impatiently, wondering what's taking her so long to return. He watches from a distance as Rhys socializes, looking radiant in the sunlight. Killian glances at his drink, wondering if Edith left because she was offended by all the attention Rhys was getting. He recalls overhearing the nasty gossip earlier, people calling her a country girl, pitying him for their forced marriage, and mocking her husband's indifference. Tap. He taps his finger on his glass, his expression unreadable as he replays their cruel words in his mind. Two ladies see Killian arrive, gushing over how handsome he is and how proud the Countess must be. As Killian walks past with a regal cape, Rhys and the other women can only stare in admiration, but he simply excuses himself, claiming he needs to go wash his hands. As he walks off, leaving a spilled drink behind, someone thinks, "Oh, sure." Killian peeks around a corner, looking for the bathroom, but stops dead in his tracks, completely shocked by what he sees. He spots Edith with her brother, Sean Rigglehoff, and realizes they're having a tense, private conversation he can't overhear. The two siblings stand back to back, a silent wall of tension between them. As Edith looks down defeatedly, Killian watches from the shadows, wondering what on earth they were talking about. When she turns around, he's right there, immediately asking why she was gone for so long. She plays it cool, saying she was just admiring the mansion, but he sees right through her lie. He wordlessly escorts her down a sunlit garden path. She's surprised he came all this way just to find her. He asks why, teasingly wondering if she's happy about it. Flashing a dazzling smile, she admits it makes her heart flutter, leaving him internally flustered by her unexpected charm. An announcement declares that the charity bazaar was a massive success, with everything sold at high prices. Edith is stunned it's already over, realizing with a blush that someone actually bought her handkerchief. She wonders who could have possibly purchased it, just glad it sold, while Killian stands nearby with a knowing look. A maid approaches Killian, asking if he knows the color of the bird on Edith's handkerchief, but he scoffs. Why should I care about? He suddenly freezes mid-sentence, his eyes wide with dawning realization. Oh. Busted. Clutching the very same handkerchief in his pocket, he convinces himself it was all just a ploy to win his mother's favor. Suddenly, a desperate cry of, "My lady!" echoes across the grand estate. Edith is bewildered as she's suddenly confronted by her brother and Killian while a new maid kneels before them, leaving her to wonder what this new drama is about. She stares, completely confused by the sudden turn of events. Her brother explains that the Count insisted they send a new maid, and Edith realizes with dread that her family is tightening its grip. He claims it's because she's his sister, but a dark flashback reveals his true face, sneering, "You dumb woman." He mentally reminds her that their family act is just for show, and her only value is her connection to the Duke, a leash they have no problem tightening. As she processes this thread, her brother explains their plan, to leave one of their own maids with her. Before she can protest, Killian shockingly agrees, allowing the woman to be her new personal maid, and Edith can only cry out his name in disbelief. He coldly tells her to pretend nothing happened, thinking this will appease the Count as Edith spirals, realizing her situation is far worse than she thought. The new, dark-haired maid helps a dizzy Edith up, then leans in to whisper a chilling greeting, "Long time no see." Looks like the family sent a spy. As the new maid leads her away, Killian watches from the doorway with an unreadable, cold expression. The maid, Sophia, feigns concern, noting Edith seems to be living well, but Edith knows this is all happening because she's defying the original story's plot. Edith recalls Sophia's villainous role in the novel, a spy and attempted poisoner, and firmly tells her she didn't send any fake documents. Sophia smoothly suggests someone from the Duke's side must have forged her handwriting to frame her, but then Sophia's demeanor shifts instantly, grabbing Edith with a terrifying look and vowing to fix her bad habits, calling her a naughty dog. Ah! A sickening thud sounds as Sophia strikes her. Edith reels in pain, realizing she's being strategically hit in places no one will see. Standing over her, Sophia calls her out for for questioning their family's plans and their allegiance to Archduke Langston. Sophia lectures her on politics, explaining their family's power is waning while the Emperor, backed by the Rudwicks, is growing stronger. She paints a picture of the Emperor's overwhelming power, arguing that siding with him is the only logical choice. With a smug smile, Sophia dismisses Edith's doubts, but Edith smirks back, asking what happens to the hunting dogs after the hunt is over. Enraged by Edith's mockery of their family, Sophia's face darkens as she growls that Edith is mistaken about her position. With a brutal kick, Sophia sends her to the floor, warning her that if she stops being a useful pretty doll, she'll kill her and frame the Rudwicks. The scene cuts to a quiet study, where a man with glasses and long blonde hair diligently writes at his desk. Elsewhere, Edith sighs at her own desk, a wave of despair washing over her as she thinks, I don't want to go home. A painful memory surfaces of Sophia's cruelty, constant violence, and mental abuse, and Edith's past defiance, calling her a beast. She recalls Sophia's vicious retaliation, grabbing her by the hair and questioning her newfound stupidity. Sophia's mocking voice echoes in her mind, asking if she really thought she was safe just because she was eating. Back in the present, Edith marvels at her own resilience, remembering how her original self was so broken she never even tried to fight back. The memory of her past self-suffering fuels her determination to never give up as she stands silently in the study. The blond man looks up from his work, observing her and noting that she seems to be thoroughly enjoying the desserts. Edith snaps back to reality, first confused, and then with a sudden jolt of understanding. Her eyes land on a nearly empty plate as she wonders in shock if she ate all the cookies herself. A man with long, ash-blonde hair and glasses remarks that the treats taste particularly good today. As Edith happily nibbles on a cookie, he kindly tells her she can have them all. Sitting at his desk, the man explains that he doesn't typically care for sweets. He continues, stating his preference for bitter or bland foods as Edith listens intently. Overwhelmed by his apparent gentlemanly kindness, Edith swoons, wondering why he looks so handsome all of a sudden. She stammers that it would be a waste not to eat them, but panics when he offers to order more. Later, Edith watches him leave with a briefcase for a week-long business trip, regretting not asking for more sweets and feeling frustrated that he's leaving. She reflects on her punishment, noting this is the only place she's allowed to eat, and that no one questions her maid Sophia bringing her food. A memory surfaces of Killian joining her for a meal, a rare occurrence that leaves her wondering about his motives. Biting her lip, she puzzles over his sudden change in behavior. She recalls him explaining that having her longtime maid with her would put her family's worries to rest, making her wonder if he was actually concerned for her. A hunger pang cuts through her thoughts, and she decides to get some air before her maid Sophia arrives to torment her. Meanwhile, Sophia seethes, recalling how Edith has changed from a trembling victim to a defiant woman she can no longer control. With a menacing smirk, Sophia vows to break that newfound arrogance. Pushing a food cart down the hall, Sophia stops short, demanding to know what someone is doing there. To her surprise, it's Ryzen, who cheerfully invites her to join them for tea, prompting a dark internal reaction from Edith. In a flashback, a young master, Cliff, stops Sophia in the hallway, and she greets him with a blush. He secretly tasks her with spying on Sinclairs, ordering her to report everything back to him and to keep it from his father. Her past happiness turns to present-day rage as she watches Cliff with Ryzen, disgusted that his interest lies with that bastard bitch, while Edith suffers. Back in the present, Edith feels faint from hunger, knowing her maid will just force her to throw up anything she eats. Seeing Killian's serious expression only adds to her embarrassment as she struggles to keep her composure. Knock knock. A sharp rap at the door interrupts her thoughts. Sophia enters with a tray, and Edith immediately questions her presence. Sophia presents a slice of peach pie, claiming it's a gift from Lady Ryzen, and that she'll allow it to avoid suspicion. With a veiled threat, Sophia urges her to eat before she changes her mind, leaving Edith hesitant. As Edith nervously agrees, Sophia flashes a sinister, triumphant smirk. Deciding to just eat, Edith takes a bite of the pie, surprised that Sophia went to such effort. The moment the food touches her tongue, she realizes something is terribly wrong, clutching her throat as she coughs up blood. She collapses in agony, realizing Sophia used the poison meant for a later part of the story far too early. Sophia puts on a show, screaming for help while inwardly cursing that her own plan has just been revealed. As Ryzen confronts a defensive Sophia, Edith realizes with horror that the scene is playing out exactly as it did in the original novel, the plot to frame Ryze is in motion. The key players are assembled: Killian, Cliff, and Ryze as Sophia points an accusatory finger. Edith wakes to find Killian present, and Sophia frantically asking if she's regained consciousness. Sophia rushes to her side, telling her not to speak, a clear attempt to keep her quiet. Playing her part, Edith weakly claims it's just a stomachache from a sudden peach allergy, shocking the entire room. Cliff, now dressed in a formal red and gold coat, smirks coldly, finding her excuse anything but funny. He orders a search of the room, and Edith knows they won't find anything, assuming Sophia has already disposed of the evidence. But Sophia dramatically finds a bottle of poison, complete with a skull and crossbones, making Edith cringe at the cliché as Cliff feigns interest. Edith weakly denies the bottle is hers, but her defense sounds feeble even to her own ears, realizing she's been perfectly framed. In the hall, Ryze thanks Cliff for his help, completely unaware of the furious glare from Sophia behind them. Cliff examines the poison, vowing to investigate further and looking forward to hearing Edith's excuses. Convinced the story is proceeding as it should, fuming, Sophia realizes she underestimated Edith, admitting she was too smart and that her own plan was flawed from the start. Leaning over the sleeping Edith, Sophia delivers a chilling threat, promising to kill her if she ever stands in her way again. The doctor informs Cliff that the poison isn't strong, but would harm someone who is malnourished, and he thanks her for the information. Killian watches from the doorway as his brother leaves the room, having overheard the entire conversation. He asks the doctor for medicine to ease Edith's pain, but the doctor warns him that painkillers will have little effect on his wife. Killian balks at her suggestion that Edith is starving herself, refusing to believe a noble would do such a thing. But as the doctor describes Edith's severe condition, a memory of her bright smile flashes in his mind, and a terrible realization begins to dawn. A narrator explains that the red-haired woman preferred to eat poisoned food herself, knowing full well the perilous condition of her body. Her husband, Killian, watches from afar, convinced she must have some sinister plan in motion, but as he stares, a sliver of doubt creeps in, making him question his own assumptions. He remembers her reputation as a self-serving noblewoman, whose schemes for attention left her isolated and disliked by all. Now, as he watches her sleep, he feels helpless, unable to do anything but witness her suffering while she dreams of his voice. He can't wrap his head around it, desperately wondering why she would knowingly take that poison. When she finally wakes, he rushes to her side, demanding to know why she did it, but she simply tells him to leave, knowing he's already judged her. Turning her back to him, she admits to herself that even though she'd given up on him, his distrust still hurts her deeply. The scene flashes to the lovely blonde, Elise, looking utterly shocked. Elsewhere, a dark-haired man reveals to Killian that Elise found poison in Edith's room, the same kind used in the tainted pie, but Elise questions the accusation, wondering why Edith would cover for her if it was a setup. Liz looks on with pleading eyes, confused why everyone is so sure Edith wants to hurt her, reminding them that they're the same age. In a flashback, Lizzie's kindness shines through as she declares they can be friends, moving Edith to ask a bespectacled woman what gift she could give her. The woman suggests something related to embroidery, since Lise loves to read and sew, an idea Edith happily accepts. A beautifully wrapped gift box is shown alongside colorful spools of thread. Back in the present, Edith stretches triumphantly, thrilled to finally be able to go to work again, while her maid gives her some serious side-eye. Suddenly, a sharp sound breaks the peace as someone screams her full name. Edith Rudwicks! Before she can react, Killian bursts into the room, his face a mask of fury as he demands to know what she's done now. Edith's moment of joy is shattered as her maid glares daggers at her, just before a furious Killian storms into the room. A sound effect punctuates the air as Edith is caught completely off guard by someone bellowing her name. Killian's rage is palpable as he grabs his collar, roaring at her and demanding to know what the hell she did this time. He confronts her, needing an explanation, but she's completely baffled, asking him what he's talking about. He angrily reveals that Lizzie is unconscious, and it happened while she was using the embroidery thread Edith gave her as a gift. Horrified, Edith denies everything, insisting the thread was poisoned after she bought it pre-wrapped from the shop. Her mind races as she recalls this exact event from the original novel, an attempt to frame her using poisoned thread sent by Sophia. She panics, realizing that despite her best efforts to prevent it, the story's plot is forcing itself to happen, magically poisoning the gift she bought. Killian grabs her, his patience gone, as he furiously demands answers, but she can only insist she's innocent. Pleading with him to be calm, she points out how illogical it would be to try the same poisoning trick twice, making him hesitate for a moment. He sighs, admitting he doesn't want to doubt her, But with all the suspicious incidents piling up, he asks how he can possibly trust her.
Fed up, Edith grabs his lapels, declaring that if he's so suspicious, he should just post more maids to watch her every move. Her maid nearly jumps out of her skin, completely baffled as to why her lady would ever ask for more surveillance. Edith stands firm, stating she's innocent and has nothing to hide, a fact that seems to make Killian reflect on how frustrating this must be for her. Turning away, he orders his butler to recall a maid named Anna to serve Edith, who breathes a sigh of relief at his swift action. As she watches him go, she knows that if he had hesitated, the situation would have become much worse. With a confident smirk, Edith feels a sense of victory, knowing that with her loyal maid back, the scheming Sophia can no longer control her.
Killian presses for a logical explanation, and Edith suggests investigating the shopkeeper, though others doubt a famous merchant would risk his reputation. When asked who had access to Lise's room, Killian lists off the very short and trusted list of people, including himself. Edith lays out her theory. Someone is using her as a scapegoat to get to Lise, a plan that would conveniently eliminate them both. Intrigued and slightly convinced, Killian simply tells her to continue. She brings up the Sinclair siblings, rumored to be plotting against Les, but admits she's not well versed in high society gossip. To be honest, she tells him, she doesn't believe a Sinclair spy could have infiltrated the mansion, but you can never be too sure. He scoffs at her family's short-sightedness, but she coolly reminds him of when his family falsely accused hers, triggering his anger. With defiance in her eyes, she explains that this constant suspicion is exactly what her family endured, even when they swore on their lives. He's stunned into silence as she reassures him not to worry, clarifying that she doesn't blame his entire family for the past. She then dismisses the topic, deciding it's not worth the effort, and he dryly remarks on her surprising level of self-awareness. Edith acknowledges his point, but worries her family won't see it that way, though she's hopeful that for once he's trying to believe her. With a knowing smile, she admits that she doesn't really care if her family clears her name anymore. Killian reveals that Lise has always defended her, and he fears she'll be disappointed in him before asking directly if Edith hates her. Looking genuinely puzzled, Edith asks the obvious question, "What? Why would I?" He explains that everyone pays more attention to Lise, but Edith just smiles faintly, finally understanding his perspective. She places her hand firmly on the table, getting his attention as she calls his name, Killian. Edith confidently introduces herself, asking Killian if he really thinks she's the jealous type. Internally, she's patting herself on the back for delivering such a killer line.
But his reaction isn't what she expected. He suddenly grabs the back of her head, leaving her completely stunned.
Her eyes widen in a silent moment of shock and anticipation.
And then he kisses her, sending a jolt of pure shock through her. What is happening? He deepens the kiss, pulling her closer in the middle of the grand room. She's completely lost in the moment, wondering why he's doing this. She melts into the embrace, returning the kiss as they're surrounded by an almost magical aura. The kiss ends, and they pull back slightly, an unspoken tension hanging between them. Edith is completely flushed, her heart pounding from the unexpected intimacy. Killian looks just as flustered, stammering an apology that barely makes sense. Looks like he lost his cool for once. Still dazed, Edith stumbles back, trying to process his sudden apology. She wonders why he kissed her like that, her mind racing with confusion. Later, Edith asks if the poisoning incident is truly settled, questioning if the investigation is already over. Her maid confirms that since the poison is so subtle and hard to trace, they don't have enough evidence to proceed. Edith finds the whole situation very strange, a nagging feeling telling her something is wrong. Meanwhile, Killian sits by an unconscious Riza's side, realizing he's in a dangerous position without her support. He knows this isn't over, certain that Cliff won't let the matter drop so easily. And he's right. Cliff is furious, demanding to know why the investigation is being dropped after only a few days. A man with black hair explains that he was also surprised, but the decision came directly from their father. With Riz still unconscious, Cliff refuses to let it slide, declaring he'll handle things himself. He's determined to get justice for Riz, vowing to take matters into his own hands. Cliff fumes that he can't believe they're trusting Edith, frustrated that an order from the Emperor keeps him from acting. Killian remains in quiet contemplation, weighing the complex political situation. Back in the study, His brother argues that he doesn't believe Edith is the culprit, citing too many variables. Killian methodically breaks down the situation, arguing that others had access to Reese's room and that Edith had no clear motive. But his brother fires back, accusing him of being a fool and jumping to conclusions, questioning the competence of their entire security. Their father, the Duke, enters the conversation, praising Killian's reasoning. He silences his other son, declaring the suspicious maid has been dismissed, and they will quietly continue the investigation for new evidence. Killian listens, his sharp eyes revealing a mind already calculating the next move. Sometime later, Killian smiles, informing a woman named Catherine that his father will soon visit the royal palace. Edith, meanwhile, is having a full-blown panic attack in a carriage, realizing the story is going way off script as she's riding with the Duke to the royal palace. Arriving somewhere new, Edith is greeted by a kind woman who notes her recovery, and Edith cheerfully confirms she's feeling great. She gives credit to her new maid, Anna, and warmly invites the girl to eat with her. Beaming, she tells her mother-in-law she's relieved Lennon needs her help again, and is happy to return to his office. The Duchess agrees, but tells her there's a detour first. The princess herself has summoned Edith to the royal palace. Back in the carriage, Edith feels a deep sense of dread, doubting the Duchess's optimism about the royal summons. The Duchess explains the royal family's long-standing bond with them and their fondness for Reese, suggesting they're simply curious to meet Edith as well. Edith forces a tearful smile, thanking her mother-in-law while internally screaming, "This is not going to be a friendly meet and greet." An introduction to Princess Catherine reveals she's a total rule breaker who defies royal etiquette and fashion norms. She's also a wild horse rider who's only ever calm and docile when she's around one person, Reese. In the novel, Catherine's free spirit was admirable, and Edith now hopes she can win over the princess as an ally. The story reveals a critical detail. Cliff was actually Princess Catherine's first love. So when Catherine met Reese, the woman who captured Cliff's heart, she was so charmed by her warmth that she ended up liking Reese more than her own crush. The weight of this knowledge settles on Edith as she sits nervously across from the Duke in the carriage. The Duke remains silent and stoic, giving away nothing. Edith's intuition screams that this summons isn't friendly, sensing a tense and hostile atmosphere ahead. The chilly reception confirms her fears as she arrives to find Princess Catherine waiting for her on a cold, silent terrace. Edith stands awkwardly, feeling she can't even offer a greeting until the princess acknowledges her presence. A single, sharp glance from the princess cuts through the silence. "Oh, you are that woman from the Regalhofs?" the princess asks coldly. Edith firmly corrects her, stating her new family name. The princess just scoffs, pointing out that Edith didn't even think to bring them tea. This is definitely not going well. The princess continues her verbal assault, stating it's better to be cautious given the rumors that Edith likes to use poison. Edith flinches, realizing with a grim certainty Cliff must have told her everything. She calmly admits her past behavior was far from perfect, but firmly denies ever using poison, calling the rumor a misunderstanding. Princess Catherine studies her, observing that Edith is at least aware of her own terrible reputation. The princess accuses her of thinking the marriage was an unreasonable burden that only made Killian suffer, but Edith deflects, asking if that's what Catherine truly believes. With a cruel smirk, Catherine challenges her to drop the act and be the vicious flower everyone knows her to be. Edith stands her ground, as the princess condescendingly asks if she thinks this whole situation is some kind of game. "Not at all," Edith replies, completely flipping the script by declaring she actually admires the princess. Her mind flashes back to the novel, recalling how Catherine once used a wig to go shopping with Reese, even throwing a tea party with her help. She remembers how Reese helped Catherine grow into her royal role, becoming a leader who could interact with society. Edith recalls admiring the princess in the novel for her fierce desire to protect her own freedom and forge her own path. Back in the present, Edith tells Catherine she trusts the judgment of a strong-willed person and doesn't need to hear empty pleasantries. The princess is visibly caught off guard by Edith's sincere and unexpected defense. But Edith immediately regrets it, face-palming as she thinks she screwed up again and needs to stop losing confidence. As she tries to run away and refocus on work, wham! Someone grabs her arm with a bone-jarring grip. Her heart stops. It's Sophia, the wicked maid, who has suddenly appeared, and Edith can only whisper her name in horror. Sophia's face is a mask of pure evil, her eyes glowing with menace in the shadows. Looming over her, Sophia gives her one last chance. Steal the tax records from the Duke's private office, or face the consequences of betrayal. Sophia's rage explodes as she demands to know why Edith botched the last job, calling her a dumb, illegitimate nuisance for getting caught. A brutal kick sends Edith to the floor as Sophia sneers that she barely escaped. But Edith silently vows that if Sophia wants blood on her hands, she'll get it. Sophia raises her hand, ready to inflict more pain, her expression cold and merciless. She grabs a coughing Edith, callously telling her that if she gets caught, the Rudwicks will kill her, so it's no longer their problem. Edith challenges her, but Sophia just scoffs, and Edith realizes with dread that her family's plot to use her as a puppet runs deeper than she ever knew. Sophia twists the knife, sneering that once Edith is useless, Killian will happily throw her away to be with Ryzen. A glimpse into Killian's mind reveals his own turmoil. He feels trapped by the rules of his world, unable to speak the truth he's been avoiding. As Sophia threatens that the Count will find a new, unpleasant use for her if she's sent back, Edith is reminded of her terrifying reality. In a painful memory, her brother promises to put in a good word for her if she just succeeds in stealing the documents. But Edith smirks back with newfound confidence, asking if he has any idea how this is all going to end. She declares a prophecy of doom. No matter what they try, Count Riegelhoff and his entire family are destined to fall. Sophia's face contorts in fury as Edith adds that even her beloved brother is going down with them. The scene shifts to a peaceful, sunlit study, a stark contrast to the dark confrontation. Lennon, the Duke's aide, sits diligently at his desk, focused on his work. Just then, Edith appears at the open door, ready to get back to her duties. She offers a gentle apology to Lennon, asking if she's arrived too late. Internally, she worries that he might suspect her in the recent poisoning incident, or ask uncomfortable questions. But Lennon simply tells her it's no problem, and to start whenever she's ready, gesturing to a literal mountain of paperwork that has piled up. Her eyes widen slightly at the sight of the work ahead. Looks like she's got her work cut out for her. Grateful for the normalcy, she thanks him and promises to start immediately, a determined look on her face. The familiar and comforting scent of paper fills the air as she settles into the quiet office. She picks up a quill, the quiet scratching sound, a welcome distraction. The only other sound is the soft rustle of Lennon turning pages in his own book. Edith finds comfort in the focused work, reflecting that her introverted nature makes her better suited for this than for charming, charismatic people. After some time, she approaches his desk with a stack of completed documents, announcing she's finished. Lennon looks up, pausing his work to tell her he's been thinking about something. He compliments her incredible speed and concentration, a genuine note of surprise in his voice. Edith gets a little flustered, thinking he's just being polite, but his expression is completely serious. Looking over her work, he gives her the highest praise. "You are very helpful." He explains that her documents are always perfectly organized down to the smallest detail. He then admits something shocking. Her work is even better organized than his own. His eyes, sharp behind his glasses, show a newfound respect. It seems she's finally proving her worth. The praise seems to catch Edith off guard, and she stares at Lennon with a conflicted expression. Overwhelmed, she bursts into tears, quickly apologizing as she flinches away. "It's not like that," she stammers, turning away in a fluster and trying to compose herself. Her tear-filled eyes show a deep well of pain and exhaustion she can no longer hide. Lennon gently advises her that bottling up her emotions will only make things worse for her in the long run. He offers her a handkerchief, telling her that suppressing her feelings is not the answer. He wisely warns that all those contained emotions are bound to explode one day. Touched by his kindness, she can only think his name, Lennon, as he tells her to take her time with the documents. As he leaves, she realizes he's right and has a breakthrough. Characters who weren't important in the novel seem less affected by the original plot. Bolstered by this thought, she cheerfully greets a passing couple, who look completely baffled by her pleasant demeanor. The woman offers a hesitant "thank you," as Edith and her maid continue down the magnificent hall. But Edith knows these small interactions won't change her fate. In fact, they'd probably be relieved if she got kicked out. She briefly wonders if Killian went to see Ryzen today, but her lonely thoughts are cut short by a sudden intrusion. Why? Killian is suddenly in her room, asking why she'd come to him after her work was done, and questioning if she dislikes him. He leans over her on the bed, leaving her completely stunned and wondering what the hell is happening. Grasping her hand, he calls her an oppressor for seeking him out and demands she explain herself. Flustered by his closeness, she asks if she should have just gone to his room instead. He accuses her of going to other people to calm her nerves whenever she gets upset. She admits it's true, but her mind flashes to the real Edith, a master manipulator who used provocation to get her way. With a knowing smirk, he says that was always her method, hiding her lies by provoking everyone around her. Blushing, she asks if he's been drinking, and says she'll humble herself this time.
He scoffs at her claim of innocence, reminding her she came to his room in skimpy clothes and asking if she's the one who's misunderstanding him.
Leaning closer, he asks with a dark intensity if she was disappointed by what happened last time.
You tried to provoke me but weren't satisfied, he sneers, accusing her of now trying to play the victim. Outraged, she demands to know what he's talking about, wondering if he's completely drunk. He corners her, whispering that she's the one with the reputation for chasing men and that he's heard all the rumors. His mind flashes to men gossiping about Killian's beautiful, wealthy wife and wondering why so many pursue her. He brings up all the men who've fallen for her and the rumors that have spread, adding that trying to excite him isn't a challenge for her. Swing freely in the palm of my hand, he commands, their faces just inches apart. He demands that Edith Rudwicks, using her full name, explain what is happening right now. But a critical truth is revealed. Killian knew absolutely nothing about what had truly happened to Edith. He reflects on his conflicting perceptions of her. Far from the stupid woman he first thought, not as smart as rumored, but definitely devious. Yet, he was also surprised to learn she was fond of the arts, and that a simple meal could bring her so much joy. He recalls how she becomes firm and sober when facing problems, standing her ground with quiet strength. Despite the chaos, she remains calm, even turning his own father to her side, while others tried to use her as a scapegoat. He admits her actions make sense now, but what's strange is how they all doubted her, even with her pride on full display. His thoughts drift to how she never appeared before the family, keeping to herself. He remembers telling her to leave his room and how she never once asked for help, even when suffering alone. Killian realizes she never blames him or burdens him with her troubles, and a flash of jealousy hits as he wonders if she prefers Lennon's comfort. He's tormented, thinking she didn't care for him, and used her tears to manipulate other men, twisting Lennon around her finger. A storm of blame clouds his mind. It's all Edith's fault. She's a manipulative seductress, until finally those prejudiced thoughts begin to shatter. His expression shifts as the fog of misunderstanding clears, revealing a dawning sense of clarity, and then he sees it. As her robe slips, the horrifying truth is revealed. Her back is covered in deep, ugly bruises. He gently touches a bruise, realizing with cold certainty that this was no accident and the injuries are old. Fury rises within him. "Who did this to you?" he demands, his voice low and dangerous as she stays silent. He grits his teeth, thinking that if a Rudwick family member were responsible, they wouldn't stay quiet. He clenches his fist and roars, "Answer me!" The scene shifts to the serene and beautiful facade of the Rudwick estate, a picture of tranquility that hides the storm inside. Later, Edith sits at a table, looking completely drained from the confrontation. Talking with her maid Anna, she admits the biggest problem is that she simply fell asleep. Killian appears, apologizing for his earlier temper. Edith reassures him it's fine, but he thinks to himself he's not so despicable as to ignore her suffering. Edith reflects with a gentle smile that Killian must have left after she finally drifted into a deep sleep. The next morning, she sits up in bed, staring at her hand in shock and wondering if she's feeling an ointment. She realizes that since only Sophia and Killian knew about her injuries, he must have been the one to apply the medicine while she was asleep. Overwhelmed with emotion, she comically bursts into tears, whining that it's completely unfair she missed such a tender moment. Her pouting is cut short when Killian barges into her room, ordering his men to bring something in and completely ignoring her questions. She watches on, totally confused by his sudden and intense arrival. The reason for his urgency is revealed. His men drag in a bound Anna, who screams that they have no right to touch a maid sent by God. Killian scoffs at her claims, declaring that her presence has only made Edith miserable. He relentlessly interrogates Anna, pointing out that as Edith's longtime personal maid, she did nothing to treat her mistress's severe bruises. He lands his final accusation. The only person who could have inflicted such injuries without anyone noticing is her. As Edith asks what's going on, Killian wonders if his actions yesterday finally revealed Anna's true colors to her. Anna tries to dismiss the wounds as minor injuries, but Killian coldly suggests she find out firsthand if she'd still feel the same way. His eyes burn with fury as he clenches his fist, his patience clearly at its end. Edith explains her twisted reasoning for abusing Edith, while Killian internally mulls over the grim fate that awaits failures from the Ryklov family. Killian reveals the Riglovs demanded she be returned without any injuries, leaving Edith stunned that they've already been in contact this early in the morning. He cuts her off before she can protest, stating that her opinion on him firing the maid is completely irrelevant. His cold, decisive words leave her utterly speechless. He announces he is sending Anna back on the carriage her family conveniently sent, causing Edith to panic internally at how suspicious the whole affair looks. Edith and her treacherous maid, Anna, share a final, tense moment in the silent room. In a surprising turn, Anna asks to check Edith's body one last time, and Edith agrees with a calm smile. The quiet rustle of Edith's dress is the only sound as the examination begins. Anna's voice trembles as she looks at the bruises, but Edith simply asks what's wrong. Anna breaks down, asking why Edith never spoke up, only to immediately apologize for her outburst, calling it presumptuous. As the maid begins to apply the ointment, Edith silently wonders if this show of concern is genuine. The scene suddenly shifts to a dark, futuristic room where a hooded figure receives a system alert. There will be a penalty if they don't meet a condition by today. The mysterious figure feels a wave of anxiety, admitting that the entire situation has felt strange and unsettling from the very beginning. Back in the story, a narrator explains the typical Villainess arc. She tries to change her fate, but inevitably falls for one of the male leads anyway. The narrator continues, explaining that the Villainess is fated to realize her powerlessness after a scandal involving leaked documents. But this version of Edith is breaking the mold. Instead of panicking and spiraling into ruin as predicted, she's calmly and logically proving her innocence. The hooded figure realizes Edith is exploiting a weakness in the system by winning over side characters who are less bound by the original plot. They note her unpredictable strategy. She builds alliances and then abruptly changes course just when the story tries to force her down a predetermined path. The scene flashes to a vision of the original story's handsome and smiling male lead, but that charming facade cracks as his fist tightens, betraying a hidden frustration. The hooded game master watches from their futuristic chair, analyzing the board. Despite her unexpected moves, the figure decides the situation is still manageable. In fact, this is an opportunity. Edith's rebellion will ultimately serve to make the true heroine shine even brighter. The plan is clear. Edith is nothing more than an ingredient to create the perfect stage for the main story. Amused that a mere ingredient is fighting back, the figure challenges Edith 13th, setting a new condition for her to meet. With a digital chime, the system confirms the second stage's exception condition is now set. The scene returns to the estate, where Cliff furiously confronts Killian, certain the maid situation is connected to Lizzie's poisoning. Killian calmly retorts that investigating without solid evidence would have landed them in hot water for torturing another noble family's maid. Killian reminds him they were lucky to get rid of the maid, but a flashback reveals it was Lize who originally gave the maid permission to stay. To make matters worse, Killian adds that their own father also gave his approval. At Liz's bedside, Killian questions her decision, but she refuses to answer, leaving Cliff to worry that someone clearly despises her. Lize silently thinks that learning the identity of her attacker would only cause her more pain. Killian finds a silver lining, glad that Lize at least spoke up for herself in front of the Duke. Suddenly, he has an epiphany. Edith kept quiet about the abuse to protect the marriage alliance, knowing it would shatter if her family's cruelty was exposed. Still, he can't wrap his head around why a woman as sharp as Edith would endure such a brutal beating without fighting back. A memory hits him like a lightning bolt, Edith demanding a new maid to monitor her. He realizes with a groan she was fighting back, just not in the way he expected. Edith's voice pulls him from his thoughts as she asks what he's pondering so deeply. Cliff furiously accuses Killian of ignoring a sick Lise because he's too busy thinking about Edith, but Lise weakly tries to stop him. Killian looks away, apologizing and admitting that he has a lot on his mind. Lise reveals her true wish for Killian to take care of Edith, as she can only imagine how hard the poisoning incident was on her. With a gentle touch, she asks him to comfort Edith, who has been suffering all this time. She suggests he take Edith for tea or a walk, encouraging him to spend some quality time with her. Her smile is pure and full of hope for their happiness. As a new day begins, Edith's hand twitches and she slowly awakens, Edith realizes with dawning horror that Killian must know everything, the abuse from her maid, Sophia, and the suspicious request for her safe return. It all clicks into place. Instead of casting her aside now that she's useless as a hostage, he took action and sent her abusive maid packing. She worries about the story's plot, realizing that getting rid of Sophia now might have thrown a wrench into future events. Knowing his sympathy won't last forever, she resolves to prove she's completely harmless to ensure her survival. Her biggest fear is that he still sees her as a manipulative seductress who uses her body to get what she wants. A steely determination settles over her as she prepares for what's next. Right on cue, Killian appears and formally invites her to have tea with him. Playing her part perfectly, she beams and accepts his invitation with delight. She thanks him for the invitation, but his curt, simple yes makes the moment feel a bit stiff. He internally questions if his approach was too sudden, and the scene shifts to the next day. He tries a different tactic, inviting her to join the family for dinner instead of eating alone in her room. With a polite smile, she gently rejects his offer, claiming she doesn't want to be a bother. He sighs, assuming she's just uncomfortable around his father, who's been tense since Lizzie got sick. His formal, decorated uniform seems to highlight the distance between them. Undeterred, he finds her reading later and tries again, asking her to join him. But once again, she gracefully declines, blaming the strong afternoon sun. Killian stands defeated outside her closed door, unable to break through her defenses. He's completely lost, wondering if he's done something wrong or if she simply despises him. He recalls Liz's earnest plea, which wars with his lingering image of Edith as a scheming villainess. While he still thinks she's a snake, he has to admit she's nothing like the woman described in the rumors. He decided to judge her for himself, but getting to know her is proving far more difficult than he ever imagined. A new idea forms in his mind. Maybe he should just crash her mealtime again like he did before. Just then, he runs right into her in the hallway, and she questions why he's there. Caught completely off guard, he fumbles for words, unable to form a coherent sentence. Edith smoothly takes control of the awkward situation, inviting him for a strawberry tart from a famous store. Her eyes sparkle with excitement. It's the legendary tart she's always been curious about. But her resolve kicks in, and she quickly backs out, making a flustered excuse about her weight. Whoosh! She practically teleports down the hall, leaving a dumbfounded Killian standing alone. She clutches her stomach, reminding herself not to be tempted by food, and to stick to her plan of being a harmless, neglected wife. Later, Lisa asks if she's disappointed that Killian has stopped trying to spend time with her, catching Edith off guard. Edith frantically denies it, insisting she doesn't feel even a, quote, fingertip of disappointment. She immediately backtracks, admitting her strong denial might have been an exaggeration. Lisa watches her with a knowing, unconvinced expression. Edith struggles to maintain her composure under Lisa's gentle scrutiny. The maids are already gossiping about how Edith keeps turning down the Lord's invitations, causing her to panic. To defend her actions, Edith paints Killian as a tragic figure who has sacrificed much for the dukedom. She tells Lise she doesn't want him to feel obligated, while privately thinking that she knows he's only testing her. The conversation flashes to Killian confronting Edith, frustrated by her rejections, and even offering horse riding lessons. She flatly refuses, completely baffled by his sudden and relentless attention, especially after he monitored her at work. Lise cuts through the excuses, telling Edith she should stop overthinking and just open her heart to Killian. The scene shifts back to Killian and Edith, where he calls her bluff, stating he knows she has no other plans. Caught, Edith can only agree, muttering to herself that her life is just eating and sleeping, the classic life of a romance fantasy noble. Edith politely suggests an opera date with Killian, only to immediately backtrack and say she's fine without it. She then suggests he take Lisa instead, but Killian looks shocked, asking if she truly means it. With a bright smile, Edith declares that the idea doesn't bother her in the slightest. Her expression hardens as she internally challenges Killian, demanding to know who he thinks she is. Leaning over the table with menacing intensity, Killian corners Edith, demanding answers. When asked what she thinks of him, Edith calmly replies that he is, of course, her husband. She immediately catches herself, realizing that if this is another one of his tests, that was the wrong answer. Killian simply listens, his expression unreadable as he looks down at the table. A narrator reveals Killian's perspective. Their arranged marriage is a nightmare and a shackle preventing him from being with the one he truly loves. In his mind, he sees himself and Edith chained together while his love, Lizzie, is happy with another, more sinister version of himself. He's convinced that the jealous Edith will cling to their love like a snake, poisoning everything. But Edith's inner voice screams defiance, declaring she is Edith Rudwick and would never be jealous of another woman. Killian's frustration boils over as he accuses her of hating him and finding another man, admitting to himself that he's the jealous one. He angrily suggests it's Lennon, but Edith looks genuinely baffled, asking why on earth he'd bring him up. Realizing her confusion seems genuine, Killian starts to leave, but Edith calls out for him to wait. Thinking he looks hurt, she reaches out and gently touches his cheek. Startled by her touch, he bitterly asks if this is all because he's just her husband in name only. He grabs her wrist, accusing her of only seeing him as a stallion, but she's just shocked by his sudden turn, begging him to wait. In a sudden move, he pulls her in for a passionate kiss, leaving her thinking this is definitely not good. As the kiss deepens, she panics, terrified he'll misunderstand her again and see her as a lustful schemer. The camera pans down to their feet, capturing the sudden intimacy of the moment. Ding! The scene cuts to a futuristic monitor, announcing that the second stage exception has been cleared, diminishing the original novelist's power. A dark-haired woman in a modern office stares at the data stream, looking completely baffled. Suddenly, it clicks. She points at the screen, exclaiming that she finally understands what just happened. She realizes the condition was absurd, and that some higher being is toying with her, using her own feelings for Killian against her. She smirks, realizing that thanks to her resolve, she's dealt a critical blow to the system's God, who must be reeling right now. Back in the control room, the hooded figure screams in frustration, shouting that it's impossible. They slam their fist on the console as the system confirms the stage is cleared, wondering how she could possibly reject the man she loves 10 times. The figure muses that love is supposed to make you give endlessly, juxtaposing the thought with a romantic image of Lizzie. As images of pure love flash by, Edith's voice cuts in, stating she doesn't want Killian spending time with her out of mere duty. The hooded figure slumps in their chair, completely defeated and unable to comprehend how Edith could act this way. Doubt creeps in as they wonder if they made a huge mistake. What if Edith doesn't actually love Killian? They realize with dread that the main character's constraints are loosening and worry what will happen if Edith reaches the third stage. A narrator explains the stakes. If she succeeds, the author's control will vanish, and the characters will write their own fates. The story will no longer be a repeating loop, time will move forward, and the beloved heroine, Lise, will be allowed to grow old. A system prompt appears, requesting the input for the third stage's exception condition. But every condition the figure inputs is met with a harsh, repeated rejection from the system. Defeated, the figure hangs their head as the system continues to deny their attempts to regain control. A sinister smile spreads across their face as a new, darker plan forms. If they can't kill her directly, they'll find another way. The scene flashes back to a tender moment in bed, where Killian softly asks Edith if she's enjoying herself. Blushing, Edith admits she finds his physique amazing, but he dismisses it as simple muscle from training. He leans in close, whispering that he thinks her body is far more amazing than his. As his hand glides over her skin, he marvels at how soft and supple she is. Killian lies beside her, a look of pure contentment on his face as he gazes at her. After he kisses her forehead, Edith thinks to herself that this warm feeling is unfamiliar. He calls her name, drawing her full attention. He then asks if she was being truthful earlier when she said she didn't just see him as a stallion. Edith is flustered by the sudden, serious question, quickly denying it while wondering why he's bringing it up now. Killian stares down at her, his intense gaze silently demanding an honest answer. Edith's mind races. This isn't just remorse, and knowing the original story, she's absolutely certain it isn't love. Edith's mind spirals, thinking the only thing left between them is physical intimacy or loneliness, she concludes, remembering Killian's tragic backstory from the novel all too well. A narrator reveals Killian's past, a second son forever overshadowed by a brother he could never hope to surpass. His brother was the perfect heir with their parents' full support, and even the woman Killian loved only had eyes for him. In that lonely world, he must have realized that the scheming villainess Edith was the only one who would ever truly look at him. And when no one else cared for his loneliness, the one person who understood him most was Edith Rudwick. Or rather, The person who understands him is the modern woman inside Edith's body, Suna Choi. Back in the present, she gently caresses his cheek, softly calling his name. Looking into his eyes, she earnestly asks what she needs to do for him to finally believe her. The scene shifts to a grand opera house, where Edith is completely starstruck by the lavish surroundings. She marvels at the beauty and acoustics, prompting Killian to dryly note that she's acting like a first-timer. She admits it is her first time, shocking Killian, while she silently panics about seeming uncultured. A look into Edith's memories reveals her father forbidding any kind of entertainment, keeping her ignorant of art, music, and even books. She realizes her father kept her sheltered because he was terrified she might learn too much about the world. As the curtains rise on The Tragedy Named Audelite, the story begins with a young woman finding an injured man named Laszlo in the woods. Overcome with sympathy, Audelite decides to help the mysterious man. Laszlo, claiming amnesia, stays with her, but he's secretly a prince who fled a power struggle in his kingdom. And just like in a fairy tale, the two inevitably fall deeply in love. But her greedy father arranges her marriage to a wealthy baron, forcing Laszlo to beg her to elope with him. The wealthy Baron Hubert, knowing her heart belongs to another, still tries to win her over with his riches. On stage, the actress playing Audelite sings of her torment, torn between her lover and her duty to her family. With a heavy heart, she makes her choice, begging her beloved Laszlo for forgiveness. She declares that while her heart is his, she has no choice but to leave him, a sentiment that seems to resonate with Edith. Wiping away a tear, Edith confesses the opera was incredible and regrets ever turning down his invitations. Killian watches her emotional reaction, his expression unreadable. He then turns to her with a serious question. Faced with the same choice, who would she have picked? Without hesitation, she declares she would have chosen the rich baron, Hubert, and definitely wouldn't have died for a man. She calls Laszlo out for hiding his identity and questions whether Audelite's love was real, if it could be swayed by wealth. When he scoffs at just wealth, she reminds him that her entire family depended on that marriage, a pain she knows Killian understands all too well. She argues that Hubert wasn't a villain, but a man who loved Audelite, offered her everything, and respected her decision. Edith bluntly calls the tragic ending foolish and unrealistic, especially Audelite's decision to die after her lover moved on. She believes that outside the drama of an opera, Audelite and Hubert could have had a perfectly happy life together. Killian challenges her view, explaining that with time, feelings change and even the deepest scars can begin to heal. With a radiant smile, Edith agrees, adding that humans are far stronger than they think. Noticing his intense gaze, she playfully asks why he's staring at her like that. Taking her hand, Killian gently asks if she'd like to take a walk with him through the streets.